Chapter 2050. At this moment, Han Fei was standing outside the collapsed small world. Hearing the sword god's words, he immediately came back to his senses. Han Fei picked up the heavy small world and stuffed it into his origin sea. Seeing this scene, sword god couldn't help but have a strange expression. It seems that you have obtained a lot of benefits in the monarch palace. This small world was the only one on the tree, and it was taken by your father. I didn't expect you to obtain another one. Han Fei smiled. I was just lucky. It's a pity that my small world was shattered within 10 minutes. The sword god couldn't help but look at the seal of God's heaven that was surging with immortal spiritual energy. You actually withstood the attack of a supreme emperor. Oh no, you have a powerful ally who can withstand the attack of a supreme emperor. I didn't know about this. Han Fei said, that was my last trump card. He didn't know whether the sword god believed him or not. He probably suspected that there was a hidden heaven creator in the chaotic ocean. The sword god said, I didn't think you would really succeed. Anyway, you must have a lot of secrets. I won't ask more. I have to go. The Grand Pure Wuji must have taken action now. Of course, if they want to come here, I'm afraid they won't be here for a while. You have about 4 hours to plunder the resources of the seal of God's heaven. Han Fei cupped his hands. Senior, please go back. I will send the resources of the sword god heaven to you when I have sorted them out. But the sword god turned into a sword light and disappeared between heaven and earth. And Han Fei's voice spread over 1,000,000 kilometers like waves. He shouted, the heaven creator is dead. The seal of God's heaven has collapsed. Return to your positions and gather the resources. What? Huang Jingyuan is dead? The palace masters of the lost immortal palace looked at the horrible scene in the sky and couldn't imagine it. Han Fei and the sword god worked together and really did it. It was the first time in the history of the chaotic ocean that someone had killed an emperor. In any case, Han Fei's name would be recorded in history and he would become a legend. Chen Guangjia exclaimed, he really did it. He killed an emperor. Doesn't this mean that Yin-Yang Heaven will become one of the most powerful forces in the chaotic ocean? Shui Ran sighed. Fortunately, we didn't offend him. Zhou Chen replied, we're considered allies. Xian Feng breathed a sigh of relief, but she was also shocked. She recalled the first time she met Han Fei. At that time, he was only at the Venerable Realm. It had only been a short while, but he had already killed an emperor. This was simply shocking news. Luo Xiaobai, Zhang Xuanyu, and the others rushed to Han Fei immediately. At this moment, Han Xian complained, why did 3 of them run away? Who let them go? Of course, no one would admit to it. However, most of the original heavenly kings of God's Seal had been surrounded and killed. What a joke! There were originally only 11 of them, and 5 of them had already died. Now, 3 of them had run away. It would be a miracle if the remaining 3 could survive against such a group of kings. Han Fei didn't care about this. He landed on the immortal palace, and with a thought, Xia Shaochan appeared in the outside world. Xia Shaochan was still nervously waiting for the situation outside, but she had already come out in such a short time. Since he could come out, it meant that he was safe. Xia Shaochan was overjoyed and quickly looked at Han Fei. Are you okay? How did you get through it? Where is that bastard from the Yin family? Hearing Xia Shaochan's incessant questions, Han Fei smiled. He's just a soul. It was blocked by Nian Er's mother. Nier's mother? Xia Shaochan couldn't help but ask, what is Nian Er's origin? You haven't told anyone about this. Han Fei felt that there seemed to be nothing to hide now, so he said, she is a heaven-opening state expert who cultivates the great Tao of time. Because she always travels back and forth in time, she asked me to take care of her daughter for a few days. Okay, don't worry about this. We have about 4 hours at most. Let's try to collect as many resources as possible here. Han Fei brushed it off, but he was thinking in his heart. Why would a venerable sovereign kill Xia Shaochan? There must be some secret that I don't know, and I don't know if my mother-in-law knows. Then Han Fei took out the nautical panorama and took advantage of the last opportunity today to point at Huang Jingyuan's source sea again. Unfortunately, when Han Fei went in again, He found that it was so dark that he couldn't even see his fingers. The whole place was misty. Han Fei finally took out a few ultra-quality spiritual stones and found that the remaining spiritual energy in them was pitifully little. Son of a turtle. Sure enough, it was drained by that in Belan. Who wants the residue? Just as Han Fei was about to leave, he suddenly found a creature outside this spiritual stone vein. Han Fei was taken aback. It turned out to be a weird half-human, half-fish creature. Han Fei stared at this strange man for a long time, only to hear the old turtle say, "There are many ways to open the sky, and some of them start with creating creatures. After opening the sky, people usually try to create some creatures. This varies from person to person. Obviously, this person tried to create a kind of creature in the source sea. But now they are all dead." Looking at the meridians of this strange man, Han Fei couldn't help but think of the seabed human race. When human beings first practiced the fish avatar technique, it was a long and complicated process. Countless people died in it, and this path was slowly becoming mature. Han Fei said, "Why does the heaven-opening state need to create creatures?" The old turtle said, "Can't you figure it out? Most of them want to try to create a more perfect race with higher potential. Then they either reincarnate or possess someone else. This kind of situation does exist, but most of them use this method when they can't go any further and feel that they can't go any further. Or the creatures they create are extremely perfect, but I don't think so. No matter how perfect they are, can they be more perfect than the Son of God?" The old turtle mumbled for a long time, and Han Fei understood what it meant. It was just creating creatures in his own source world, which was not a big deal. But the old turtle didn't think that the creatures he created would be very strong. He thought that any random son of God could kill all the creatures created by these people in seconds. In this regard, Han Fei reserved his opinion. The existence of the source sea was like creating a world. Since you can even create a world, what's the big deal about creating a few more creatures? Han Fei didn't stay long and quickly left the Huang Jinyuan source sea. This day was destined to be an extremely turbulent day in the chaotic ocean sea. At first, only kings died, which was actually not new in the chaotic ocean sea. There were so many strong masters in the chaotic ocean sea, and it was normal for a king to die occasionally. Generally, no one would investigate deeply. However, it was really rare for more than a dozen kings to die in a row. Even when exploring the imperial palace, there hadn't been so many deaths. Therefore, after Han Fei killed 7 kings in a row, the leaders of all the forces in the chaotic ocean sea were already paying attention and deducing. And when they saw the traces of the great Tao that looked like the opening of a heavenly river, the emperors all looked serious. This was no longer an ordinary event. That day, He Daoyuan, King Wu, Xia Hongzhu, Shi Huang, Kong Xin, and the others calculated the direction of the collapse of the great Tao of the emperor and arrived at the apotheosis heaven. Because the location of the apotheosis heaven was not too big a secret. Even after the apotheosis heaven was sealed, it wouldn't move too far. It was just that the city protecting formation was activated, so it was difficult to find. But after the emperors roughly confirmed that it was the apotheosis heaven, everyone quickly arrived and quickly left. They came to confirm the current situation of the apotheosis heaven. As a result, when the emperors arrived, they all looked solemn. When they guessed that something had happened to Huang Jinyuan, they had already roughly guessed who was behind it. When they discovered that this place had almost been plundered, the entire main city had almost been destroyed by the void storm, and the thick blood qi had almost permeated the entire God's Bane heaven, all the emperors thought to themselves that Han Fei was really too ruthless. He had directly destroyed the entire city. Almost on the same day, He Daoyuan returned to the Grand Purity Palace and directly drafted a decree to the entire Grand Purity Palace. Anyone from the Grand Purity Palace who finds the traces of the Yin-Yang Heaven or the Waterwood Heaven will be awarded a sea-quelling bizarre treasure and accepted as a direct disciple of the Emperor. The Wuji Heaven, the 100 Demon Clan, the Seabed Human Clan, and all the other races almost followed the same routine and began to frantically search for the Yin-Yang Heaven. The bounty for finding the Yin-Yang Heaven in the Martial Emperor City accumulated. For a while, all kinds of treasures were counted, and it was as many as 10 billion ultra-quality spirit stones. As soon as this news came out, the entire Martial Emperor's city went crazy. It could be said that the entire chaotic ocean sea was looking for the traces of the yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven. As for Han Fei himself, he had been hiding in the investiture heaven. The emperors came and went, but none of them found Han Fei. He stayed for a few days and left calmly after plundering the source seas of the kings. 1 month later, the yin-yang heaven. Han Fei frowned as he listened to Luo Xiaobai's summary of the total income of the investiture heaven this time. In total, plus those found from the bodies of the half-kings and the venerables, there were 134. 8 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones, including a large number of weapons. Han Fei plundered less than 68 billion from the treasury of the investiture heaven and the resources stored in the immortal palace. Han Fei wondered, that shouldn't be the case. Such a big immortal palace only has so little money? Luo Xiaobai took a breath and said, actually, it's not a small amount. It adds up to more than 200 billion. A large number of ordinary people mainly died in the void storm. The investiture heaven was destroyed. It's not bad that so many people survived. Han Fei scratched his head. Half of the sword god's reward should be taken away. In addition, the kings of the other families are here. It's not right to give too little, and it's not enough if we give too much? Zhang Xuanyu asked, sword god gave so much? Han Fei nodded. Of course it can't be less. Without the sword god, we have no chance of winning this battle. I'll add 12 billion to my share and give 80 billion to the sword god heaven, no less. The rest, except for me, will be divided equally among the kings. Lu Renkuang couldn't help saying, no, Fei Fei. When did you become so generous? I risked my life to get it. Why shouldn't I take it? Han Fei said leisurely, you can give me all of it. Billions of them are nothing to me. I might as well give them all. After I cultivate in seclusion for a few days, let's go look for ultra-quality spiritual stone veins. I don't believe we can't find 17 or 18 ultra-quality spiritual stone veins in this vast sea area. In fact, Han Fei knew that he didn't suffer a loss this time. He had collected a large amount of chaotic energy and immortal spiritual energy, which were actually more valuable than these ultra-quality spiritual stones. As for the kings, they didn't have the money to work for them for free. It was fine if they did it once or twice, but they wouldn't be willing to do it again. After all, this time, he came to them half-blackmailed them, so he couldn't blackmail them all the time in the future. There were still the Grand Pure Wuji, the 100 Demons, and the Seabed Human Clan to fight. If he gave them more now, even if he threatened them in the future, they would be grateful to him for his generosity. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but smile. Han Fei's celestial navigation apparatus was indeed too powerful. He could easily find ultra-quality spiritual stone veins. Luo Xiaobai said, by the way, Uncle Xian sent a message. Now the entire chaotic ocean is looking for us like crazy. I guess all the families are scared and want to find and kill you before you fully grow up. I've thought about it. Although this route has been abandoned for a long time, it has been cleared by us. If someone really comes, there is a certain chance that they will find this place. I wonder if we should enter the Mist Sea? Han Fei sneered. No hurry. There are many strong masters in the chaotic ocean, but if they are not kings, a lot of them will die on the exploration road. What we should consider now is whether we should go to the 100 Demon tribe or the human tribe at the bottom of the sea. Or should we go one by one? Chapter 2051. Luo Xiaobai's worries were not unreasonable. Although Han Fei had opened up this abandoned route, it was also because of Han Fei's opening that the danger on this route was greatly reduced. If the entire chaotic ocean sea was dispatched, none of the routes controlled by the Martial Emperor city could escape. It was only a matter of time before they were discovered. However, to search so many routes, it was impossible for all the king-level powerhouses to search. At most, it would be some venerable realm powerhouses. In this way, as long as one person was arranged to block the route, the time before the yin-yang heaven was discovered could be greatly extended. After Han Fei gave the resources to the sword god, on the way back, Han Fei directly summoned the old turtle. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, you have been cultivating for so long. It seems that it is still too difficult for Gue Sanqing to advance to the sea expansion realm with this body." The old turtle nodded. "This guy's level is indeed not high. It's a pity that Pang Jia has been killed by you. Otherwise, that guy's body would be not bad. However, I can't do possession too much. Every time I possess someone, I will fuse with the possessed to a certain extent. If I fuse too much, I will get lost. I'm not in a hurry now. Anyway, you will leave this place and go to the sea realm in the future. If you go there, you should be able to find my body. At that time, I can directly return to the heaven-opening realm." This was something that Han Fei and the old turtle had long planned. The old turtle also said that he had a big gift for him. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, you will stay here and guard this route with Gue Sanqing's body. Intercept and kill all those who come." The old turtle said, "Now all the major forces in the chaotic ocean sea are guarding against you. It won't be easy for you to sneak attack them." Han Fei smiled. "Then let's wait for a while." Half a month later, Han Fei, Xia Shaochan, Luo Xiaobai, Zhang Xuanyu, and Lu Renkuang embarked on the treasure hunt again. The rest of them continued to stay in the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven to continue cultivating. After all, the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven hadn't been out for long and needed time to accumulate. Besides, during this period of time, it could be said that the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven were growing rapidly. Countless people cultivated day and night and had no time to explore the outside world. On the black ship in the sea of bewilderment fog, the five of them were eating hot pot, when Zhang Xuanyu said, "The nautical panorama can only be used for a short period of time each time. It's difficult to accurately locate the target. So far, Whitefish has not found a large top-grade spirit stone mine. Shall we change our strategy?" Everyone looked at him, and Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Do you have a better way?" Zhang Xuanyu said, "Should we go to the sea region that the Grand Pure One and the others are in charge of? The Earth Meridian environment where the immortal palaces are located should not be bad, right? Will there be more top-grade spirit stone veins?" Xia Shaochan rolled her eyes. "That's a bad idea. It's too risky." Lu Renkuang asked, "Even if we find them, mining won't take a day or two. Can you guarantee that no experts will notice you?" Han Fei said, "The current speed is a bit slow, but we have more or less dug 5 or 6 small mines. Although on average, a top-grade spirit stone vein only contains tens of millions to 1 or 200 million top-grade spirit stones, but the frequency of finding top-grade spirit stone veins is very high." Han Fei couldn't help looking at Luo Xiaobai. "What do you think?" Luo Xiaobai shook her head slightly. "Let's find the first big mine first and see what happens." Another month passed. Han Fei and the others had dug more than 20 small veins one after another and dug a total of 2.8 billion top-grade spirit stones. This number was actually extremely shocking. When Han Fei first came to the Chaotic Sea, he didn't think of directly looking for spirit stone veins here. Otherwise, he would definitely have made a lot of money. But now, if the 2.8 billion top-grade spirit stones were divided equally among the 5 of them, it was not bad for Zhang Xuanyu and the others, because their origin sea was not large. Now, as long as they had time, they would concentrate on developing the origin sea. So, if they maintained this rate of resource acquisition, it was completely acceptable for them in a short period of time. Besides, each of them had received nearly 5 billion top-grade spirit stones, which had already made their origin sea develop much faster. However, such a small amount of resources was not even enough for Han Fei. On this day, as usual, Han Fei quickly used the navigator 3 times and passed tens of thousands of kilometers in the mist sea at the fastest speed. According to the reaction of the navigator, Han Fei thought that he would find another small spirit stone vein this time. Therefore, after the 3 times of the navigator's pointing were used up, Han Fei lazily summoned Little Black and Little White. Han Fei said, "Daughter, look around and see if there are any ultra-quality spirit stone veins nearby." Little White seemed to be used to the recent routine, so after sensing for a while, she swam in a direction. However, after only swimming for an hour, he suddenly heard Little White say, Dad, I feel a lot of spiritual energy. It seems to be very dangerous there. A lot of spiritual energy? And very dangerous? Han Fei was shocked when he heard this. He hurriedly stepped on the cabin and shouted, "Come out, it's time to work." Lu Renkuang poked his head out of the cabin. "Fei, you found it again?" Zhang Xuanyu jumped out. "I was waiting for you to call me." When both Luo Xiaobai and Xia Xiaochan came out, Han Fei said, "We're back to work." "Work?" Han Fei grinned. "Let's go and have a look first. If I'm not mistaken, the ultra-quality spirit stone vein this time should not be small." As soon as he said this, everyone cheered up. Didn't they come here to find resources this time? Han Fei had just fought the gods' investiture heaven. Although he won, he actually realized the real gap between his strength and that of the heaven-opening state. Not only Han Fei, but Luo Xiaobai and the others also felt the same. Therefore, including Han Fei, they actually didn't plan to do anything in the near future. That was why he took Luo Xiaobai and the others to look for resources. After a moment, in fact, there was no need for Whitey to lead the way. Everyone could already sense the density of the spiritual energy in this place. The density was twice that of the yin-yang sky. However, such rich spiritual energy was obviously abnormal, and Little White had just said that it was very dangerous here. When everyone was 100,000 kilometers away, Han Fei shouted, "Stop, there is danger here, but I haven't seen where the danger comes from." However, suddenly, everyone found that the seawater was moving, and invisible waves suddenly surged towards them. Han Fei subconsciously felt that something was wrong. The surrounding seawater became sticky in an instant, as if it had turned into paste. Then Han Fei and the others felt an abnormal wave slapping at them. Bam! Han Fei threw a backhand punch against the sticky seawater, and a terrifying blow comparable to that of the heaven-opening state burst out. Rumble! The seawater exploded, and some transparent jelly-like pieces of meat came at them. And around them, the pressure from the seawater was getting stronger and stronger. At this time, information emerged in Han Fei's eyes. Name: Invisible Mother. Introduction: a kind of transparent jellyfish that can completely turn into seawater, belonging to the Behemoth clan. It's difficult to detect their location when they are not in a battle. The Invisible Mother can turn into seawater, and by controlling the viscosity of the seawater, she can kill the enemy through pressure. Level 94 Quality Ancient Mutant Realm Sea Opening Realm contains chaotic gas greater than 8,655 wisps. Combat skills: Solidifying Glue, Bloodline Reverse, Extreme Compression. Collectible Pressure Water. Remarks: it's best not to fall into the range of the Invisible Mother, or it will be difficult to escape. As soon as he saw this information, Han Fei was shocked. There were indeed all kinds of strange things in the world. He had observed for a long time but didn't find any danger. It turned out that the real danger was this seawater. He looked at Zhang Xuanyu and the others, only to find that they were all coughing up blood. Even Han Fei himself felt that the essence blood in his body was flowing very slowly. However, they were also kings. How could they be beaten like this by a behemoth? Oh, besides Han Fei, Lu Renkuang was the first to take action. A swallowing vortex appeared, and a large amount of seawater was swallowed by Lu Renkuang crazily. Then, all kinds of demonic plants grew in the seawater. Although most of the demonic plants were crushed the moment they were born, there were still a large number of demonic plants that were not afraid of this squeezing force at all. For example, if you wanted to squeeze a piece of paper, how hard would you have to squeeze it to grind this paper into powder? Xia Xiaochan directly turned into a shadow, and only Zhang Xuanyu was still resisting with the power of his soul and his body. The Invisible Mother probably didn't expect that Han Fei and the others would be so difficult to deal with. With a flip of her hand, she was smashed into pieces by Han Fei and the others. After all, this Invisible Mother was only in the Pioneer Sea realm. How could Han Fei, who even dared to kill Sky Splitter, be afraid of it? Even Lu Renkuang's swallowing power was too much for him to handle. The invisible, unfathomable matriarch wanted to use its ultimate suppressive power, but unfortunately, the only person it could suppress was Zhang Xuanyu. The other four didn't care. They attacked indiscriminately, and in a moment, the invisible, unfathomable matriarch exploded. Han Fei activated his yin-yang divine eyes, pointed his knife at a water area in the seawater, and said coldly, "You're courting death." However, before Han Fei's knife slashed down, he heard a crisp voice hurriedly. "Everyone, let's talk." Chapter 2052. The invisible enigmatic mother thought that maybe she could defeat these people with the help of extreme compression. Even if she couldn't defeat them, she could still turn into seawater and disappear. However, she didn't know that Han Fei didn't take the usual path at all. He even knew where her soul origin was. She had never encountered such a situation before. At this time, there were 5 kings on the other side, so she definitely couldn't escape. Suddenly, a woman with mushroom hair emerged from the seawater. She waved her hand at them and said, "I didn't want to kill you. It was you who wanted to rob my spiritual stone mine. I wanted to protect my home, so I took action." The seawater in front of the woman with mushroom hair was rapidly compressing. She seemed to be afraid that Han Fei and the others would suddenly attack her. "Humph!" Lu Renkuang snorted coldly. "So it's a woman. I was almost fooled by you. How can you just give me such an understatement?" Zhang Xuanyu held his spear and panted heavily. He said, "You almost killed me. No matter what you say today, I will definitely die." However, the woman with mushroom hair said, "Don't kill me. I am Water Toot Toot of the Behemoth clan. Let me go, and you can get the friendship of the Behemoth clan." Zhang Xuanyu said angrily, "Who do you think you are? Can you represent the Behemoth clan?" Water Toot Toot said, "I really can." With that said, a few pieces of water jade appeared in front of her, and she said, "Our Behemoth clan has never been enemies with the other major forces in the chaotic Azure Sea. Look, this is a water jade secret treasure unique to Water Toot Toot. I have given the entire Behemoth clan a gift. This can be used as a shield and has the power of my shield. If you take this out, other behemoths will know that you know me, and they won't give you a hard time." Zhang Xuanyu was about to say something when Luo Xiaobai suddenly said, "Do you mean that your Behemoth clan can contact each other?" Water Toot Toot quickly shut up, seeming to realize that he had missed something. He heard that humans and other races were not friendly to the Behemoth clan. They coveted the bodies of the Behemoth clan every day and used them to refine various weapons. He must never reveal the secret of the Behemoth clan. Hearing Luo Xiaobai's question, Han Fei suddenly had an idea. According to his contact with the almighty beasts, he felt that these almighty beasts were indeed an alien group that he could make friends with. Although the giant toad he had met in the imperial palace was also a clever toad, the people from the giant beast lineage were the ones who hadn't caused any trouble the entire time. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Watery doodle, right?" Shuedu nodded repeatedly and humbled herself, only hoping that Han Fei and the others would let her go. Han Fei said, "We'll take your water jade too. We want this supreme grade spirit stone vein as well." Water Toot Toot hurriedly said, Here, I'll go find something else." Han Fei smiled and said, "We are not bloodthirsty people. Are you interested in helping us contact the heaven-opening stage powerhouses of the Almighty Beast clan?" Toot Toot was stunned. Why were these people looking for the heaven-opening titanic beast? Could it be that they were plotting something? But that was a heaven-opening behemoth. She didn't believe that anyone in the chaotic vast sea could shake a heaven-opening stage beast, even if it was a heaven-opening stage powerhouse from the major forces. In the Almighty Beast clan, how could ordinary people compare to those who could cultivate to the heaven-opening stage? However, Shui Tudu didn't dare to agree. After all, the Almighty Beast clan was strictly prohibited from interacting with the major races. Whether it was humans, the 100 Demon clan, the Seabed Human clan, or the Mermaid Royal clan, they were all prohibited from interacting with each other. In the past, there had been many examples of almighty beasts interacting with humans in history, but the final outcome seemed to be not very good. Shui Tudu said, "I can only ask." Han Fei and Luo Xiaobai looked at each other. Sure enough, the Almighty Beast clan had a heaven-opening stage powerhouse. Secondly, the Almighty Beast clan also seemed to have a nest. This nest could allow them to contact the powerhouses of the same almighty beast clan. Luo Xiaobai said, "Let her go." Han Fei understood and smiled faintly. "Shui Tudu, you can remember my name. My name is Han Fei, the master of the yin-yang heaven. In the future, I will unify the 36 profound heavens of the human race. You can tell your heaven opening stage powerhouse of the almighty beast clan my identity. Whether he is willing to come to see me or not, I hope you can help me convey this message." Shui Tudu was taken aback. The master of the yin-yang heaven? I seem to have heard of it, but I don't know. I forgot. But she was overjoyed that she could survive. With a splash, Shui Tudu turned into seawater and quickly disappeared. She said, "I will help you convey your message. As for whether the heaven-opening behemoth is willing to see you or not, I don't know." Shui Tudu slipped away quickly. When she completely disappeared from everyone's perception, Zhang Xuanyu wondered, "Why did you let her go? She is a sea-opening stage powerhouse. She should have a lot of resources, right?" Xia Xiaochan wondered, "Are we going to unite with the almighty beast clan?" Han Fei said, "I won't know until I see her. Anyway, in our current situation, it's not suitable to offend the last major force in the chaotic ocean. In that case, we will almost become enemies with the entire chaotic ocean." Luo Xiaobai nodded. "I think so too. It's not appropriate for us to provoke the almighty beast clan again. The main reason is that this clan can move freely in the chaotic ocean and is extremely mysterious. It's not good for us to offend them. But if we can unite with them, we will have one more powerful ally, although this is unlikely." Han Fei nodded. "The almighty beast clan has been in the chaotic ocean for tens of thousands of years and has never allied with any force. I guess it's impossible." However, Han Fei was also puzzled. Old Han and the king crab had become good friends since they were children. Was this an alliance? But in any case, they had seized a huge mineral vein this time. Han Fei said, "Hurry up and mine." Han Fei summoned the nine-tailed mantis shrimp. Luo Xiaobai and the others used different methods. Luo Xiaobai loosened the soil and let Lu Renkuang absorb the energy, while Zhang Xuanyu and Xia Xiaochan collected the ultra-quality spiritual stones in the mineral vein. While they were operating, Lu Renkuang wondered, why does the almighty beast clan occupy such a large mineral vein but not collect the entire mineral vein itself? Zhang Xuanyu shrugged. Who knows? Anyway, we can make a fortune from it. However, Xia Xiaochan said, I know this. Because the birthplace of the ultra-quality spiritual stone mines will also absorb spiritual energy from all directions, which is much more useful than the spirit-gathering formation. The mermaids and mermaids have some mineral veins. As long as they use them properly, they will grow and multiply endlessly, and they can use them for many years. If they cut off the earth veins here, the ultra-quality spiritual stone mines can't continue to expand. Hearing this, everyone immediately understood. Luo Xiaobai said, Then why didn't you mention the mineral vein I found in the seaborne grassland last time? Xia Xiaochan said, How long will it take for us to devour spiritual energy? This water toot-toot was enjoying such a large best-grade spirit stone vein all by itself. She doesn't care about time. She has been absorbing spiritual energy for thousands of years. If she can absorb twice the resources of an ultra-quality spiritual stone mine, why not? But there are so many of us. It won't be enough. Hearing this, everyone immediately understood. Han Fei said, We don't have the time to wait for an ultra-quality spiritual stone mine to grow. Anyway, the chaotic sea is very big. It won't affect us at all even if we have 8 or 10 spiritual stone mines. 6 days later, Han Fei and the others dug the spiritual stone mine clean, and Luo Xiaobai even extracted an earth vein, obtaining a total of 8 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones. Such a huge mineral vein stretched for tens of thousands of kilometers and was as deep as 100 kilometers. Fortunately, they were all in the Pioneer Sea realm. If it were a venerable, it would take him a long time to dig. Han Fei had planned to divide up this batch of ultra-quality spiritual stones equally, but now he didn't have enough spiritual stones. However, Han Fei had almost emptied his pocket in the battle of the investiture god heaven, So this time, only one of them took 1 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones and gave the rest to Han Fei. Luo Xiaobai said, "Our origin sea is still small and needs a lot of time to develop. Now even if it is full of resources, we can't use it all." Zhang Xuanyu also said, "Besides, no matter how many resources we have, we still need enough chaotic qi. Now the amount of chaotic qi is limited. Even if you give us all these resources, we still have to digest them." Han Fei agreed. In fact, Zhang Xuanyu and the others were much better than he was. Where did he get billions of ultra-quality spiritual stones in the past? Now they were all worth tens of billions of ultra-quality spiritual stones. These resources were enough to pave the origin sea with a radius of 30,000 kilometers. Han Fei nodded. "Okay, then the rest is mine. Anyway, when the time comes, we will take over the 100 Demons clan and the Seabed Human clan. There are endless resources waiting for us." After distributing the ultra-quality spiritual stones, Lu Renkuang said, "These days, no one from the giant beast clan came. Is it because they are too far away?" Han Fei nodded. "It's normal that they don't come. Anyway, it doesn't matter whether they come or not. We don't have the foundation to cooperate with the giant beast clan, so we just have to give it a try. Anyway, we won't lose anything. Let's continue to look for resources." "Wait a minute. However," Luo Xiaobai said, "try to find only the giant beast clan. If a giant beast like Water Toot Toot likes to occupy a mineral vein for cultivation, will other giant beasts do the same?" Chapter 2053. Luo Xiaobai's idea was refreshing. It was a good idea. In this mist sea, there were too many mineral veins. It could be said that thousands of mineral veins of various colors could be found within 100,000 kilometers of the sea. In fact, a mineral vein of hundreds of millions of ultra-quality spiritual stones was already not small. If there were no nautical phenomena instrument, how could they excavate in the depths of the sea? However, there must be people who specialized in finding ultra-quality spiritual stone mineral veins. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many ultra-quality spiritual stones in the chaotic ocean sea. However, Han Fei felt that the method Luo Xiaobai proposed might be something that no one had tried before. First of all, the giant beast race was mysterious to begin with. They traveled through the chaotic azure sea and rarely showed themselves. Other than when opening up new routes, there was a chance of encountering them. Most of the time, whether it was the human race, the 100 demon race, or the human race at the bottom of the sea, it was very difficult to encounter the giant beast race. With Luo Xiaobai's proposal, it only took them 4 days to find a second giant beast in a sea of flowers at the bottom of the sea. When they first arrived at the Sea of Flowers, they felt that it was also a place full of spiritual energy, but it only covered a range of 1.5 million kilometers. After they went deeper for more than 10 minutes, they encountered a large area of poisonous fog. This poison was a great threat even to pioneer sea realm cultivators. However, it was almost impossible to force Han Fei and so many other kings to retreat with just a poisonous fog. Even if it wasn't Han Fei's team, any random group of people who found such a strange place wouldn't be easily fooled. Seeing that Han Fei and the others refused to leave, a strange demonic vine stretched out from under this sea of flowers. It also tried to attack Han Fei and the others, from illusion attacks to attacks combining illusions and entities. Unfortunately, this demonic plant didn't expect Han Fei to be so strong. When Han Fei found the right location, penetrated the veins of the earth, and found her body within 10 minutes, she was dumbfounded. The flower spirit was suppressed by Han Fei's powerful force at this moment, and her eyes were full of resentment. She shouted, "Human beings, don't even think about getting the slightest benefit from me. I'll blow myself up." However, Han Fei took out a water jade casually and said, "Do you know this? Dudu? What did you do to Dudu? Let me tell you, if you provoke the behemoth bloodline too much, the heaven-splitting behemoth bloodline will come looking for you." Han Fei smiled faintly. "This is a gift from Water Toot Toot." "Impossible. Dudu has never had any human friends." Han Fei shrugged. "If you don't believe me, ask her yourself. By the way, help me pass a message to your heaven-opening behemoth. Tell him that the human sovereign Han Fei has something to discuss with him. As for how to find me, that will depend on luck. I stayed for 7 days each time. Alright, you can go now. Hua Ling was confused. You let me go? What else can I do? Do you want me to chop you up and use you to refine a rare treasure? 3 days later. Zhang Xuanyu, 8 billion, a lot less than last time, but fortunately, our speed of finding resources is too fast. Fei, you take 5 billion and we'll split the rest. TSK, if this goes on, it won't be long before we become rich. Lu Renquang asked, if the heaven-opening behemoth comes, can we still rob them in the future? Then we can't rob them anymore. Let's cooperate with the behemoth bloodline. Otherwise, why would they cooperate with us? I just don't know if we should return them. Han Fei immediately said, it's still impossible. How can we return the resources that we've already got? 7 days later. Han Fei still didn't see the heaven-opening behemoth coming, so he began to look for the next beast. This time, it took him a little longer. It took him 8 days and he almost crossed the fog sea. This time, Han Fei found a 6-color dragon snake, which was a descendant of the dragon clan. After looting 2 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones, Han Fei released the snake again. After another 7 days, Han Fei saw that no one came, but it didn't matter. Anyway, as long as the heaven-opening behemoth didn't come, they could rob more resources. For the 4th time, Han Fei spent 5 days and finally found a toad in a desert area in the Fog Sea. Yes, it was the toad behemoth. When Han Fei saw the toad behemoth, it opened its mouth, stuck out its huge tongue, rolled up a huge sandworm, and dragged it into its mouth. Han Fei was stunned. The chaotic sea was so big, but he didn't expect to find an old acquaintance so quickly. However, this time, Han Fei didn't feel how rich the spiritual energy here was. The moment Han Fei appeared, the toad behemoth said to him via voice transmission, "Brother, I've finally found you. I really admire you. No matter how far away you are, you can find people of the behemoth bloodline in just a few days. You really scared many kings of the behemoth bloodline." When Han Fei and the others appeared in front of the toad behemoth, the toad behemoth was smiling and talking to Han Fei with its 2 super big eyes. Xia Xiaochan looked at Han Fei. Do you know each other? Han Fei replied, we traveled together for a while in the Imperial Palace. Han Fei said, oh, it's you, Brother Toad. It seems that you have been waiting for us? The toad behemoth smiled. Yes, I was waiting for you. I'll let you know that the heaven-opening behemoth of my behemoth lineage told you to run slower. He was slow and couldn't catch up to you even after rushing over several times. Ah! Han Fei and the others looked at each other. What did this mean? Did the heaven-opening behemoth come to find them? Han Fei was speechless. He came to find us? The toad behemoth said, you destroyed the nests of several behemoths in a row and dug several ultra-quality spiritual stone mines. The heaven-opening behemoth naturally knew that you had a way to find us. But he is a behemoth that can't run fast. Every time he rushed over, you would have been gone for 2 or 3 days. So Jiao Jiao, Water Toot Toot, and Hua Ling scattered and waited for you to find us. Han Fei was dumbfounded. Is the heaven-opening behemoth so slow? The toad behemoth said, it's not the heaven-opening behemoth that is slow, but the heaven-opening behemoth. Don't go. I'll call the heaven-opening behemoth over. The toad behemoth took out a big conch, blew on it for a long time, and then slowly put it away. Brother Han, I heard that you killed an emperor warrior? Why are you still thinking about us behemoths now? The big toad had been entrusted with a heavy responsibility and was waiting here for Han Fei. His heart was beating like a drum. What if this bloodthirsty person killed him? If Han Fei hadn't let Water Toot Toot and Hua Ling return, the toad might not have dared to come. Han Fei glanced at it. Do you behemoths also care about current affairs? The toad said, it's mainly because you made too much noise. Since you can already kill an emperor warrior, why do you still want to find us? Our almighty beast bloodline has never stirred up trouble. It's a win-win cooperation. Forget it. Let's talk about it when the heaven-opening behemoth comes. Although the toad had a lot of questions to ask, It didn't want to provoke Han Fei, who could even kill an emperor warrior. So, the 5 of them watched the toad eat clam silkworms for 10 days in a row. Lu Renquang said via voice transmission, "These clam silkworms are all idiots. They know there is a toad, but they still come out for no reason. Are they stupid?" Luo Xiaobai said, "It's not that they want to come out, but the place where the clam silkworms are is sealed. They will die whether they come out or not." Lu Renquang sighed. "These clam silkworms are so pitiful." Han Fei sneered. "Pitiful? They are all splitting the little clam silkworms down there. They just come out to feed them, hoping that the toad will leave as soon as it is full." While Han Fei and the others were chatting, they heard an old voice from far away. "I'm exhausted. Human, since you can find a behemoth, why don't you go to me directly? Why do you want me to come to you? Don't you know how to respect the old and cherish the young?" Han Fei and the others scanned the area with their perception but saw nothing. Even Han Fei scanned the area again and again, but he didn't see anything. After more than 10 minutes, Han Fei looked 2 million kilometers away and saw a super big snail with a giant shell on its back moving slowly close. Beside the snail, Water Toot Toot and the flower spirit were sitting on its shell. Water Toot Toot made the seawater smooth, making it convenient for the snail to move forward. The flower spirit summoned giant vines and dragged the snail to run wildly. The seawater 100 kilometers deep couldn't even cover half of the snail's eyeball. Its body length was more than 800 kilometers, which made Han Fei and the others dumbfounded. "Isn't this too fucking big?" The snail's shell was almost as tall as the sky. Han Fei was speechless. This emperor's speed is probably not even as fast as that of an ordinary pioneer sea realm cultivator. Besides, do you have to come with such a huge body? You shouldn't be like this even if you transform into a human, right? Most importantly, Han Fei couldn't understand when a snail became a big shot in the sea. Whoosh! When it was still 1,000,000 kilometers away from Han Fei, the big snail finally transformed into a human. It turned into a hunchbacked old man with a large arc-shaped shell on his back. His eyes, eyebrows, and beard were all white. Holding a cane in his hand, he glared at Han Fei fiercely. "What are you looking at? Do you have a conscience to make an old man like me walk so far?" Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, "Senior, you're already in the pioneer sea realm. Why are you so slow?" "Slow?" The old man snorted. "I'm slow? I'm already the fastest snail in history. If I dare to be fast, the void here will collapse, and the great Tao here will think that I'm an alien and will chop me. Do you still think I'm slow?" Han Fei. Chapter 2054. It was the first time that Han Fei had heard that an emperor would have such a big entourage. Even Xia Hongzhu and the others aren't as exaggerated as you, who can collapse the void just by running. "You're just bragging." Han Fei said, "Senior. But no matter what, we've finally met. In fact, I want to talk to you about a win-win situation." However, when Han Fei was about to say something, he heard the old snail say, "I know you." Although the giant beast bloodline doesn't usually pay much attention to the chaotic vast ocean, this emperor still knows that you killed a monarch. As he spoke, the snail was already 100,000 kilometers away from Han Fei. Han Fei reminded them, "Relax your mind and be ready to enter my source world at any time." "Kid, how can the giant beast clan have any bad intentions? You came to me, but now you're so scared." Han Fei didn't care that the old snail heard his voice transmission. He just grinned. "After all, you're at the heaven-opening realm. If you really attack us, we can only run away. Why don't we talk there?" The old snail stopped and propped himself on the ground with his cane. "I know what you're trying to do. The chaotic ocean has 5 major forces: the human race, the 100 demon race, the seabed human race, the mermaid royal family, and the giant beast clan. We, the almighty beasts, have never participated in your battles. You just killed an emperor a few days ago. Now that you've come to me, it's obvious that the other forces are tempted but feel that they're not strong enough, so they're targeting the giant beast clan. How can I not know what you're thinking?" Han Fei thought that the old snail was very shrewd, but he didn't disagree. He said, "Senior, let's not beat around the bush. I just want to cooperate with the giant beast clan. Look, except for the extremely aggressive races such as the 100 Demon race and the seabed human race, the giant beast clan has almost no natural enemies in the chaotic ocean. Although the chaotic ocean is huge, if we can wipe out these two forces, Han Fei, on behalf of the human race, will never make things difficult for the giant beast clan. In this way, the giant beast clan will really have no natural enemies? The old snail sneered. If you can't beat it yourself, why should the almighty beast bloodline help you? Han Fei didn't take the old snail's word seriously. If the old snail was strong, he could do whatever he wanted. He said, "It's simple. Take down these two clans, and we'll split the resources equally. How about it?" Han Fei smiled and said, "I slaughtered the god's seal heaven and obtained nearly 300 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones. And this was only the god's bane heaven. If a superpower like the 100 Demon race was destroyed, their resources would only be 10 times or even tens of times greater than the god's sealing heaven. Don't you think it's better to split the resources in half?" Hiss, Luo Xiaobai and the others glanced at Han Fei, wondering how the investiture of God's heaven had 300 billion resources. It seemed that Han Fei was going to brag again. Sure enough, the toad behemoth, water toot-toot, flower spirit, seven-color dragon snake, and other giant beasts were all shocked. According to what Han Fei said, there were indeed a lot of resources. 3 trillion resources? Oh my god! These behemoths felt that they couldn't even begin to calculate this amount. Even the old snail was slightly startled, thinking to himself, is there such a thing? Wouldn't the two clans add up to 10 trillion? Only Luo Xiaobai and the others knew that it was Han Fei who had exaggerated 200 billion resources into 10 trillion déjà vu. To be honest, even they were tempted by this number. However, this old snail had seen the world and wouldn't be so easily intimidated by Han Fei's words. He said, "Kid, it's easy for you to say. The 100 Demon race and the human race at the bottom of the sea all have heaven-opening realms. Although none of them can shake this old man isn't too proficient in combat. Furthermore, their two clans are one, and they have quite a few kings. If you want to exterminate them just like that, why did you come looking for this old man? Furthermore, although my almighty beast bloodline values resources, it's not like we can't understand the situation here. It's impossible to use my giant beast bloodline as a tool." Han Fei's expression didn't change. No matter what the old snail said, the performance of the toad behemoth and water toot-toot just now had already betrayed them. Obviously, they really needed resources. They were definitely not as calm as the old snail said. Han Fei said, "Senior, you can't say that. How can I use you as a weapon? We are cooperating for a win-win situation. We are still the main contributors. Look at investiture heaven. I didn't come to you to cooperate, did I? Didn't I settle it too? Of course, I also admit that I found the sword god to cooperate with. However, doesn't this mean that the strength on my side is not weak? I, the sword god, and you, senior. That's equivalent to 3 emperors. If the Beast Kings are dispatched, I can have as many as 30 Beast Kings on my side. Is this strength weak?" The old snail pondered for a moment. Whether Han Fei was opportunistic or not, it was a fact that he killed Huang Jingyuan. However, it was still not feasible to trick them into fighting the 100 Demon race and the human race at the bottom of the sea. It was not easy to cultivate the Beast Clan. Although they were big, they were few in number. Besides, in the same realm, size didn't mean anything. As for the 100 Demons clan and the seabed human clan, they had survived in the outer sea for so many years. If they were so easy to defeat, the human emperors of the inner domain would have killed them long ago. Han Fei wouldn't have had the chance to kill them now. So, the old snail continued to shake his head. "No. How do you know the real trump cards of the 100 Demon race and the human race at the bottom of the sea? What if they have hidden heaven-opening realms? No matter how many Beast Kings go, they won't be able to defeat them." Han Fei spread his hands. "Me. By the way, senior, do you want to leave the chaotic Azure Sea? You should know about the Human King's eastward journey and the War Queen's cross-border journey, right?" The old snail nodded. "Of course I do. But these two didn't end well. There was no news from the Human King and he never returned. The War Queen came back, but she has been sleeping ever since, which shows how dangerous the outside world is. We, the Beast Clan, have a long life. It will be easy for us to live for hundreds of thousands of years. Why should we go to the outside world to seek death? Han Fei was speechless. This old snail was a bit stubborn. They were not interested in going out and could resist the temptation of resources. Then what else could attract them? Han Fei believed that every race had its own aspirations. The ultimate goal of all creatures was nothing more than to open the sea and the sky and achieve immortality. The beasts, of course, cultivated for the same goal. When he first met the king crab, he knew that the beasts were constantly transforming. However, every time they transformed, they would grow larger. Han Fei couldn't help but murmur, to maintain such a large size, they should need a lot of resources. The amount of energy they absorbed every day should be an astronomical figure. How could they resist the temptation of resources? If he were a beast, he might be the most aggressive in the chaotic Azure Sea. He would have launched a battle and wiped out the 100-demon race. How could he be indifferent to so many resources? Unless they had their own accumulation of resources and had the confidence to resist the temptation of so many resources. Also, opportunities like ultra-quality spiritual stones were actually not enough to tempt them. Did they need more advanced resources? Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something. The growth of the beasts was a process of constant evolution and transformation. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Senior, if an emperor dies, their immortal spiritual energy will be provided to the beasts. How about that?" The old snail's eyes flickered. He looked at Han Fei for a while and said leisurely, "Are you willing to do that? That's immortal spiritual energy." Han Fei grinned. "Once I open the sky, I can produce immortal spiritual energy myself. What's there to be reluctant about?" The old snail said leisurely, "However, let's not talk about whether it's difficult to kill an emperor or not. How much immortal spiritual energy can they accumulate?" Han Fei said with a smile, "Senior, maybe an emperor doesn't have much immortal spiritual energy. But the resources in the chaotic Azure Sea are limited. How can they support the Beast Kings to open the sky? The outside world is rich in resources, but it's a bit dangerous. How can it be so easy to achieve immortality without going through danger?" Toad, Waterdoodle, Hualing, and the others all looked at the old snail. To be honest, they were tempted. The beasts needed too many resources. Although they could travel through the Mist Sea, they could only reach the peak stage of the sea expansion realm with the spiritual stone mines alone. It would be very difficult to go further. Toad said something to the old snail, and the old snail suddenly said, "Han Fei, right? Well, don't you have a way to find the way? You can come alone to the place of origin of the beast bloodline to find me. If you can help me solve a problem, I'll cooperate with you." Luo Xiaobai and the others all looked at Han Fei. He couldn't go alone, right? What if it was a trap? Han Fei said generously, "Okay, it's a deal." Xia Xiaochan immediately pulled Han Fei. "What do you mean by, okay? Aren't you a bit too casual?" Luo Xiaobai also said, "Don't be impulsive. We don't have to cooperate with the beasts." Han Fei said to everyone via voice transmission, "It doesn't matter. In the chaotic Azure Sea, even if it's a dragon's pool or a tiger's den, I can still go there. What can the beasts do to me?" Han Fei said, "Senior, how long will I be gone?" The old snail said, "That depends on when you can solve that problem. If you can't, you can leave at any time. If you are afraid, I can't do anything about it. That problem can only be solved in the land of origin of the almighty beasts." Chapter 2055. 3 days later. On the edge of the Mist Sea, on the way back to the Yin-Yang Heaven. Luo Xiaobai said, "From a rational point of view, I think this trip is very dangerous. The behemoths don't care about anything, but they care about a mysterious problem. Besides, why does he want you to solve it? How does he know you can solve it?" Xia Xiaochan nodded. "Yes, there must be something wrong with that old man. He's not trustworthy." Zhang Xuanyu said, "Fei, you are strong, but the Sky Creator behemoth can't be weak either. Listen to what he said. If you run faster, the void will collapse. This old man's strength may be too strong. If he really has any thoughts about you, such as taking over your body, what can you do? Han Fei sneered. It's impossible for him to possess me. Once he does, he will die. Lu Renkuang asked, what if he wants to eat you? Han Fei said angrily, do you think it's always you? You want to eat everything you see? Han Fei said, I've made up my mind. I've found some clues after cultivating to my current level. It's very difficult for me to improve my strength further. Even if I have another 10,000 years, I can only improve by 20% at most. Even so, when the time comes, I can barely fight against someone at the Sky Creator realm. It's still very difficult to defeat the Grand Pure Wuji and the 100 demons. Now that I can find allies, why not? Besides, if I kill the emperors as soon as possible, I can also get more resources from the Source Sea where they died and accelerate my cultivation. So, I must go on this trip. Seeing Han Fei's determined attitude, everyone knew that it was useless to say anything. Luo Xiaobai said, since you have made up your mind, we will go back to the Yin-Yang heaven to wait for you. But if something goes wrong, you must leave immediately, or find a way to inform us. Don't worry. Once there is no danger there, I will contact you as soon as possible. After bidding farewell to Luo Xiaobai and the others, Han Fei didn't hesitate at all and directly controlled the navigator to the place of origin of the behemoth. As he said, if he wanted to become stronger, he couldn't wait passively or grow slowly by looking for resources. In the investiture heaven, he went to Huang Jingyuan's origin sea and forcibly absorbed more than 20,000 wisps of immortal spiritual energy by refining demons. However, after he refined this immortal qi, it only increased his strength by less than 5%. However, it could increase the strength of the origin sea to a whole new level, and it could even expand the origin sea. The old turtle had said that immortal qi was a high-level energy that could only be used after the heaven-opening realm. Although it could be used now, its greatest use was to open up the origin sea. Because immortal qi was extremely rare, he only needed about 10 strands to create one strand of baleful immortal qi. These 20,000 strands of baleful immortal qi would be enough for him to create 2,000 strands of baleful immortal qi. So Han Fei didn't dare to use it. But when he thought of the evolution method of the behemoths, he had the idea of consuming all the immortal spiritual energy. He was wondering if the origin sea created from the immortal qi would be better than the one created from the spirit qi. However, Han Fei wasn't in a hurry to do that. Opening up the origin sea was easy, but filling it was difficult. He'd better go to the place of origin of the ultralisks first. 17 days later, Han Fei was quite shocked. If he really wanted to pass through the mist sea at full speed, it would only take him 1 day, but it took him 17 days to go around and around, and the nautical panorama was still pointing at him like it was the real thing. As early as the 10th day, Han Fei found something wrong. Even if some places couldn't be accurately located, it shouldn't be like this. When he looked for other ultralisks, it only took him a few days to accurately locate them. But it took him so long to reach the place of origin of the ultralisks. Until today, when Han Fei made marks along the way, he found that he had been circling around a place with a length of more than 500,000 kilometers. There seemed to be something wrong with the space here. Once he entered this area, he seemed to immediately come out of this area. It was not a problem with the nautical panorama. However, the fog sea didn't block perception. But the result of his perception was not a problem. Everything seemed to be like a normal sea, and he could easily see through this 500,000 kilometers of sea. Is the space here so weird? Han Fei couldn't help but smile faintly. It seemed that the snail was also testing him. It was probably trying to tell him that if he couldn't even find this place, he wouldn't be able to leave the chaotic sea. How could Han Fei admit defeat? Since there was something wrong with this space, he just needed to find out where the problem was. This time, when the navigator rotated again, it was different from when it foolishly rushed in. The nautical panorama was just turning gently and slowly. Although the range was not large, it had been continuously turning. This made Han Fei realize that this so-called space was changing at any time. This point was not the way to the place of origin. The place of origin was there. Han Fei should have been there countless times, but the two didn't belong to the same space, so it was meaningless for him to go there. It was a pity that during the rotation of the nautical panorama, Han Fei broke through the void several times but failed to open the entrance to the place of origin. Therefore, Han Fei could only restart it. He repeated this 3 times, but still didn't find a way to enter the place of origin. However, he found that what was rotating with the nautical panorama was the fog here. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder. It was difficult to tell the direction in the chaotic sea. Then what was the point of the sea of fog? Was it to separate the inner area and the outer area? Han Fei seemed to have discovered some secret. Was the existence of the sea of fog related to the place of origin? Although he didn't have the pointing function of the nautical panorama, Han Fei observed the turning of this weapon. In the end, he found that this fog would pause 6 times a day, and when it paused, part of the fog would reverse. In the end, Han Fei found that the fog paused 6 times a day, each time for less than 1 breath. After each pause, a piece of fog seemed to disperse, but in fact, it was spreading in the opposite direction. When Han Fei retreated 500,000 kilometers to observe this weapon again, he could no longer find the phenomenon of the weapon pausing, nor could he find the phenomenon of the fog reversing. Han Fei couldn't help but feel refreshed, because 1 breath was really too short. The further away he was from the place of origin, the more the movement of the fog would disappear because of the distance. Sure enough, this is the center of the Sea of Fog, the so-called place of origin. The next day, Han Fei didn't rush to use the nautical panorama. Instead, he first performed the Gemini Divine technique and didn't break through the void until the fog paused for the first time. This time, a hole appeared in the void and directly sucked Han Fei in. As soon as Han Fei entered, he found a completely different sea area. First of all, when Han Fei scanned with his senses, he found that the environment here almost included undersea forests, sand seas, seaborne prairies, undersea volcanoes, coral reefs, salt seas, mineral veins, desert in the sea, abyssal chasms, and countless other strange undersea landforms. As Han Fei spread out his perception, nearly 30 senses swept over. There were actually more than 30 kings here. There were more than 3,000 venerables. Han Fei glanced at the old snail in the center of this place. Not bad. The fact that you can find the place of origin means that you are indeed capable of leaving the chaotic sea. The old snail complimented. Under the gaze of countless enormous beasts, Han Fei quickly came to the center where the old snail was. However, what no one noticed was that the ripples here were slightly swaying, and a small black stone was slightly swaying. The place where the old snail was located was a weird metal platform, which seemed to be a very high-level mineral vein. Han Fei was alone, tens of thousands of kilometers away, facing the old snail that occupied an area of more than 800 kilometers, which made him look very small. Han Fei cupped his hands. "Senior, now that the place of origin has been found, may I ask what problem you want to solve?" The old snail's figure slowly shrank, and in the end, he shrank into an old man. He looked up at the stars in the sky and then knocked on the metal mine with the wooden staff in his hand. The cultivation of beasts has its advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that the growth and transformation of the beasts are only related to the amount of time and resources. The resources we need to open the sky may be 10 times or even 100 times what you need. The old snail said leisurely, however, the higher the realm of the beasts, the larger their bodies will be. The further they go, the more they feel that the body of flesh and blood on their back is a heavy bag, and the more they want to get rid of this body of flesh and blood. However, this path is obviously not right. Beasts usually cultivate their bodies. Even demonic plants have extremely powerful bodies. If they want to get rid of their flesh and blood, they will directly deny the path that the beasts have walked before. What do you think is wrong with the cultivation method of the beasts? Han Fei was stunned. "I'm not a fucking beast. How do I know how to show you the way?" Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Senior, how do I explain the cultivation path of the beasts?" However, the old snail didn't take it seriously. He said slowly, "You are the second human to enter the place of origin. Do you know why I asked you to come here?" Chapter 2056. The second one? Who's the first one? The snail said, Tai Yuan. The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. Obviously, Tai Yuan didn't help the old snail solve this problem. Han Fei shook his head. If he had known that the old snail would drag him here to ask for directions, he wouldn't have wasted so much time. Since when did he, a human, have to answer the questions of the giant beast clan? The old snail knocked on the wooden plank and said, I asked you to come here because the ancestor of the giant beast clan was a human. Han Fei was dumbfounded. The ancestor of the giant beast clan was a human? Were human beings so awesome? Was it not enough for them to transform into fish demons? Why did they have to cultivate themselves into beasts? The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. Since the ancestor of the giant beast clan was a human, why don't you find someone else to try? The old snail said, what I'm looking for is a body cultivator. In the entire chaotic azure ocean, other than us almighty beasts, the only decent body cultivators, other than Grand Primordial, are martial kings. Now there's you. The reason why I didn't ask King Wu to come is that we don't trust him. Han Fei was surprised. You just trust me? The old snail said, you have a clean background. You are the master of the Yin-Yang heaven, the son of Jiang Linxian and Han Guanshu. Why don't I believe you? Han Fei couldn't help raising his eyebrows. It turned out that the giant beast clan didn't know anything. It could dominate the chaotic ocean. How could it be a noob? Han Fei shrugged. Even if I have a clean background, do you dare to bring me to the land of origin? The old snail said, anyway, with your tracing ability, you will remember the giant beast clan sooner or later. This emperor inviting you here and you coming uninvited are two different things. If you come uninvited, it means war. Han Fei shrugged. In any case, it seemed that the giant beast clan was facing a very tricky problem. Han Fei said, Senior, you won't ask me to guess your path blindly, will you? The old snail smiled mysteriously. Of course not, but before you unravel the answer, you have to know how the giant beasts cultivate. As he spoke, he saw the old snail slowly take out a jade essence tube from his bosom. He said, this land of origin is the origin of the almighty beasts. And the origin is this giant beast beneath my feet. Pooh! The old snail's jade essence tube hadn't been handed over yet. Han Fei staggered. Isn't there a huge metal mine under your feet? Han Fei's perception swept out again, and he didn't reach the end until he had crossed 8,000 kilometers. The lower half of the metal mine was buried at the bottom of the sea. It clearly looked like a metal vein, okay? However, when he heard the old snail's words, he didn't feel good. If the old snail was the largest beast he had ever seen, then this metal beast was 10 times bigger than the old snail. What kind of realm was this? Han Fei took a breath and asked, where is his face? Old snail, the jagged metal cliff beneath you is his face. In the past, he still had a nose and a face, but as time went on, his body seemed to have become slightly rigid, so he became like this, like a giant mine. Han Fei, Gudu Han Fei swallowed. Then let me see how you cultivate first. At this time, the old snail had handed the jade essence tube to Han Fei. The old snail said, immerse your soul in it. Han Fei was not afraid that the old snail would attack him, because the old snail had no killing intent at all. But when Han Fei's soul was immersed in it, with a swoosh he seemed to have come to another world. His soul seemed to have left his body. In front of him, there was a super creature 7 or 8,000 kilometers long that looked like a manta ray, swimming in the void. Good boy, Han Fei didn't expect that the beginning would be so shocking. Where was this? Such a huge creature was swimming around. Wasn't its body heavy? Han Fei looked around. Suddenly, the void darkened, and a black hole suddenly appeared. Half of the super manta ray's body suddenly twisted. Han Fei looked again, only to find that it turned out to be a black fish 4 or 5 times larger than the super manta ray. The huge black hole turned out to be the mouth of the fish, which tore half of the super manta ray apart. Shoot, Han Fei didn't feel good. What the hell was this? Wasn't it supposed to be about cultivation? Why did he feel like he was watching a movie? Besides, this movie was too outrageous. A creature with a body of nearly 10,000 kilometers was torn in half. What was wrong with this world? The big black fish bit and swallowed the super manta ray, and then turned into a young man, who sat cross-legged and began to cultivate. Then, Han Fei saw that the void was flashing in all directions. When he looked again, he found that he was already in the starry sky. It seemed that billions of stars were emitting starlight and being swallowed by this young man. Han Fei saw that the young man waved his hand, and as many as millions of rare mineral veins appeared in the void. As he opened his mouth, the rare mineral veins that were at least tens of millions of mountains were swallowed by this young man. At this time, the young man shouted, "Today I, Qin Feng, walk the path of behemoths as a human being and become a god. I'm going to pass on the divine path of behemoths to the human world. The behemoths have no barriers in their bodies, and they can absorb heaven and earth. They are engraved here. It's not easy for future generations to become gods or live forever." Han Fei suddenly came back to his senses, but in his mind, a miraculous technique was immediately imprinted. Divine Path of Behemoths, unrated. Introduction. The Divine Path of Behemoths is a cultivation art passed down by the gods. If you want to cultivate the divine path of behemoths, you must understand the path of behemoths. Some swallow the sea into their bodies, some cultivate by eating minerals, some swallow the void, and some cultivate by refining their bodies. To cultivate the Tao of behemoths, you must abandon your original path and cultivate the path of behemoths. This art is ranked 13th on the Emperor roll of the 10,000 races in the vast ocean. Path of Behemoths. Uncomprehended deduction, not deductible effect. You can transform into an enormous beast and cultivate a supreme true form. Remark. This art comes with 1398746 paths of behemoths. You don't have to understand the Tao on your own. Han Fei was shocked when he read the information of the divine path of behemoths. Ranked 13th on the Emperor roll of the 10,000 races in the vast ocean? Han Fei looked at the old snail in shock. The old snail was smiling at him and saying, "Are you tempted? You can become a behemoth if you cultivate again." On the same level, the behemoths are much stronger than the other races. Take me for example. The martial emperor, the grand primordial emperor, He Daoyuan, the war queen, and even the human king can't break my shell. Han Fei's mouth twitched. "Senior, are you doing this on purpose? Are you trying to lure me to cultivate the divine path of behemoths?" The old snail asked, "Are you willing to? You have the body of a human, and it is very likely that you are different from us demonic beasts. I suspect that only the body of a human can reach the peak." Han Fei said, "I'm not willing to." Han Fei thought, "It's impossible for me to give up my current path. The divine path of behemoths is strong, but can it be stronger than the Jade Bridge?" The old snail heaved a sigh. "Just as I expected. The divine path of behemoths is good, but it's not tempting enough. Unless you're willing to give up everything you have right now. Just keep reading." Han Fei sank his mind again to understand the cultivation method of the divine path of behemoths. There were nearly 1.4 million cultivation methods in it. Han Fei naturally couldn't read them one by one. What he wanted to read was the cultivation method itself. The problem that the old snail and the others encountered was that their bodies were getting bigger and bigger and needed more and more resources. Their bodies were getting more and more overwhelmed, so they wanted to get rid of their shells. To put it bluntly, the old snail and the others wanted to get rid of their huge physical burden. And this was obviously different from the cultivation content in the divine path of behemoths. The divine path of behemoths could be cultivated all the way to the apatheicized realm. Just look at its ranking and you'll know. Han Fei quickly read the entire cultivation method. It was written that when the divine path of behemoths reached the king realm, it would need 10 times or even 100 times more resources than ordinary creatures. If they reached the heaven-opening realm, they would need more resources than the longevity realm. And the quality of the resources couldn't be low, because these resources would be used to cultivate their huge bodies. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Senior, isn't it clearly stated in the cultivation method that you need resources, a lot of resources? Since you need resources, Senior, you should cooperate with me to destroy the 100 Demons clan and the human clan at the bottom of the sea. Why did you refuse me?" The old snail said, "Read again. Read carefully." Full of doubts, Han Fei read the entire cultivation method 2 or 3 times again. After reading it for the 4th time, Han Fei saw such a sentence in the author's words. "I cultivated the divine path of behemoths. When I reached the heaven-opening realm, an emperor tried to rob me. Fearless, I attacked the emperor and fought for 3 days and 3 nights until the stars were broken and the big stars fell. The emperor couldn't get it, so he left. The emperor was close at hand. I killed the emperor and achieved the divine path of behemoths. From then on, I dominated the world and became famous in the sea realm." Han Fei thought about it several times. At first, he was quite excited, but after reading it twice, he became confused. "Senior, can you defeat an emperor now?" The old snail looked at Han Fei with a stiff smile and said, "I can't even catch up with you now. Do you think I can defeat an emperor now?" Han Fei said, "Not necessarily. Speed may not be your advantage. Maybe you're very strong." The old snail said, "That's the problem. Qin Feng didn't pass his divine path to us. But now that the giant beast lineage had cultivated to the sea expansion realm, the consumption of resources was negligible. Even their physique can't bear it. Obviously, the gap between their peak combat power and Qin Feng's is too big." Han Fei was speechless. "Isn't that because you didn't absorb enough resources? If you poured 1 trillion resources into the origin sea, wouldn't your physique be stronger?" The old snail said, "No, it's not a problem of resources. Even with so many resources, I can't go on this path without the help of a peak-level body refining technique. Tai Yuan once left his chaotic demonic body and created me. But I found that his chaotic demon body was no longer enough to bear the growth of the divine path of behemoths." Han Fei was speechless. So, this old snail did have an ulterior motive. Asking me to come here to solve the problem? It turned out that he was here to ask for a cultivation method. A body-refining cultivation method. Han Fei was speechless. "Can't you just say it directly? Do you want me to come here in person?" However, this trip was worth it. At least he got the divine path of behemoths. However, Han Fei suddenly thought of something. Although the chaotic demon body was far inferior to his void body refining technique, it was still ranked more than 10,000 on the sea opening list. However, after being reminded by the old snail, Han Fei suddenly became excited. Others didn't have a powerful body refining technique, but he did. The void body refining technique was ranked 8th among the sea opening realms. Even the chaotic demon body could make the old snail open the sky. What about the void body refining technique? Han Fei swallowed. "My main body can't cultivate this Tao, but it doesn't mean my incarnation can't." Han Fei thought to himself. But this cultivation method can't be given away for free. Besides, how did this old snail know that his body refining technique would be stronger than Tai Yuan's? Chapter 2057. When Han Fei saw the toad behemoth was looking at him with longing, he immediately understood. This toad thought that he had obtained the body refining inheritance of the venerable emperor, so it told the old snail about it. Yes, if it weren't for this reason, the old snail wouldn't have chased after him several times. He reckoned that the growth of the giant beast bloodline really depended on powerful body tempering techniques. As for why they refused to leave the chaotic ocean, it was not difficult to understand. Everything outside was unknown. Creatures like giant beasts had treasures all over their bodies. If they were captured by others, it would not be an exaggeration to say that their entire bodies were dismembered. The old snail and the other giant beast kings thought Han Fei was weighing the pros and cons when they saw Han Fei was lost in thought. After all, although the giant beast divine path was shown to Han Fei probably wouldn't cultivate it himself. The old snail said, "In fact, it doesn't matter if you cultivate the giant beast divine path or not. You can cultivate your reincarnation. If your reincarnation walks the giant beast divine path, it can also greatly enhance your strength. Besides, once you cultivate the giant beast divine path, you will be one of us." The old snail was persuasive. Anyway, for the old snail's race, there weren't many giant beasts. With a strong master like Han Fei joining them, the giant beast clan could survive. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the old snail. Senior, your plan is too good. You tricked me into using my reincarnation to walk the giant beast divine path so that I would have a sense of belonging. On the other hand, it doesn't restrict my body, so I can still walk out of the chaotic ocean. If my body can conquer a world, I will definitely accept the giant beast clan. If my body can't conquer a world like the Queen Zhan, or I die, I still have the incarnation of the giant beast clan. Han Fei's heart sank. Who the fuck said that the giant beast clan was simple-minded? They were too smart. Han Fei was tempted. Because when he saw the giant beast divine path, he indeed wanted to walk this path. Oh no, not only did he want to walk this path, but he had to walk this path. This path was too tempting. Han Fei said, I want to know, did Senior Tai Yuan also leave his reincarnation here? The old snail couldn't help but look at an old tortoise among the beast kings. Look, what did I say? He must have guessed it. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the old turtle, speechless. Even if you want to cultivate, why are you staying in the behemoth clan? Why don't you return to your chaos heavens? He heard the old turtle's leisurely voice say, Kid, you are really smart. When I saw the giant beast divine path, I knew that I had to walk this path. Therefore, I didn't hesitate to choose to reincarnate and walk the giant beast divine path. The old turtle's aura was slowly growing stronger. Although it hadn't reached the heaven expansion realm, its aura should have reached the pinnacle of the sea expansion realm. However, the pinnacle of the chaotic devil body couldn't even be compared to the stainless profound body, so how could it compare to his current strength? But Han Fei still asked, Senior Tai Yuan, since you have the chaotic fiend body, why is your beast body still in the Pioneer Sea realm? The old turtle stood up shakily and said, I can now maintain the peak sea expansion realm's combat power. But if I enter the heaven expansion realm like the snail monarch, I will be restricted by this world. Even my movement speed will become slow. Although I have the strength of the heaven expansion realm, I can only use less than 30% of it. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. There are so many restrictions after splitting open the heavens? Tai Yuan, the giant beast divine path is an extremely terrifying great Tao. As the great Tao is too powerful, the strength after splitting open the heavens will not be weak. If I split open the heavens, my strength will be close to that of the true body. However, when the time comes, you will discover that the Tao will be restricted from absorbing too much of the world's power. To escape this restriction, you need a great world that can accommodate imperial lords and gods. Han Fei's heart stirred. If he could only use 30% of his strength after splitting open the heavens, it would indeed be worse than not splitting open the heavens. Han Fei couldn't help but look at the toad, Water Toot Toot, and company. He heard the toad say, Don't look at us. All the behemoths that cultivate outside have yet to reach the Pioneer Sea realm. After all, there are so many behemoths, so it's normal for us to be weak. Han Fei's voice was leisurely. Yes, I did get the body-refining inheritance of the venerable emperor. My current physique should be the strongest under splitting open the heavens. But since I can be so strong, what's the point of me not cultivating the giant beast bloodline? If I leave, I will just have one more fighter. The old snail asked, Isn't this enough? Han Fei's voice was leisurely. I don't know how many resources I need to cultivate the giant beast divine path. I'm crazy in need of resources now. Otherwise, why do you think I asked you to ally with me to attack the 100 Demons clan and the Underwater Human clan? Without resources, how can I cultivate the giant beast divine path? The old snail, so that's what you're thinking. It's not that you don't want to cultivate, but you don't have resources. So, you are asking Senior Snail Emperor for resources. The Snail Emperor was also taken aback. So, as long as you are willing to share the body refining technique, I can give you 50 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones. You can use them to cultivate the giant beast divine path. However, Han Fei's face immediately darkened and he said, Senior, I'll randomly pick one of you. Which one of you reached the Pioneer Sea realm with 50 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones? Me. Immediately, Han Fei saw the centipede, The giant flood dragon, the mussel, and even the toad all responded. The toad said, "I've only used 38 billion so far. Of course, not including the origin sea." The centipede said, "I've only used 32 billion so far, not including the origin sea." The giant flood dragon said, "Eh." Hearing this, Han Fei retorted, "That's why you are weak. You can't beat human beings in the same realm. It's because your resources are too little. I've used more than 100 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones now. If I cultivate the giant beast bloodline, how can I fight without trillions of resources?" Wow, Han Fei said trillions of resources, which stunned all the kings. "You don't even rob people like this. Trillions of resources? Why don't you swallow us all?" The old snail said, "Trillions of resources, do you know what that means?" Tai Yuan said, "Han Fei, even if you cultivate the giant beast divine path, you can't cultivate to the extreme of the pioneer sea realm in one go. No one can cultivate like this. How can you become a great cultivator without training?" Han Fei pretended to think. "Senior Tai Yuan, to be honest, although I don't know what level your chaotic demonic body is, I can tell you the heritage I got from the venerable emperor. However, according to the inheritance I got from Dizun, I'm not afraid to tell you that I'm ranked 998 on the sea expansion list of the 10,000 races in the vast sea." Seeing that the giant beast didn't seem to be surprised, Han Fei seemed to be thinking, "Is ranking 998th among all the clans in the vast sea realm very high?" Han Fei sneered. "And do you know how many clans there are in the vast sea?" The old snail asked, "How many?" Han Fei curled his lips, raised his head, and smiled disdainfully. 29,622,223 races. What do you think of the ranking 998th? Wow, all the beasts gasped. Even the old snail couldn't help but be shocked. What kind of body refining technique was this? How could it be so powerful? Han Fei sounded so convincing. Although they might not believe it, they would know whether it was good or not as long as they took out this technique and practiced it. If it's weaker than the chaotic demonic body, it must be fake. But if it's stronger than the chaotic demonic body, it doesn't matter. Anyway, this technique is indeed powerful. Hearing this, the old snail said, "How about this? I'll give you 100 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones. Also, I'll ally with you human beings." Han Fei was about to speak, when the old snail continued, "Finally, I'll allow you to explore the divine body of origin. Until now, no one has been able to break the origin divine body under me. We even suspect that the divine body is still alive." "Huh?" Han Fei was stunned. "It's still alive?" The old snail said, "Since you can find the place of origin, you must have found the source of the fog in the mist sea. And the reason why the fog runs is because of the divine body of origin. You can cultivate reincarnation and enter the behemoth clan while exploring the divine body. You can also move around outside. Isn't that great?" Han Fei was completely tempted by what the old snail said. It was like a pie falling from the sky. It was just a pure mystic body, although it was indeed ranked 998th. How could it compare to his void body refining art, which was ranked 8th? Han Fei thought about it. This trip was even more beneficial than robbing the gods' investiture heaven. With these 100 billion resources, his origin sea would immediately be filled up, and he would still have more than 60 billion resources left. Besides, when they cultivated the pure mystic body, a lot of resources would be wasted. When the time came, he could filter the remaining essence with the yin-yang millstone. As for cultivating the giant beast divine way, Han Fei had already thought about it. Before, he had never had a suitable opportunity to use the Everything 3. But today, the moment he saw the giant beast divine way, Han Fei knew that his opportunity had come. Chapter 2058. Han Fei pretended to look down at the so-called divine body of origin. He didn't expect to get any benefits from this body. He just felt that he could get 100 billion top-grade spirit stones, cultivate the divine way of the giant beasts, and absorb the remaining resources that they used. This was simply faster than robbing resources. Okay. Han Fei pretended to think about it for a long time before agreeing. He said, let me make it clear first. The body refining technique passed down by the Supreme Emperor is definitely stronger than the chaotic demonic body. However, the consumption of resources is also extremely high. The old snail said, that's not a big deal. The physical strength technique at the level of the Supreme Emperor only cares about effectiveness. Resources are readily available, so they don't care about resources. Han Fei nodded slightly. Senior, please accept my inheritance. The old snail was overjoyed. Sure. However, Han Fei suddenly hesitated. Well, the old snail? Han Fei rubbed his thumb and index finger and chuckled. Senior, shouldn't we be more frank now that things have come to this? The old snail was speechless. He hadn't even started yet and he was already asking for resources? Was this person so greedy? Tai Yuan didn't ask for anything at all and took the initiative to exchange for it. However, thinking that Han Fei looked down on Tai Yuan's chaotic demonic body, the old snail accepted it. The old snail seemed to be rummaging in his origin sea for a long time, and then threw 100 sun moon shells to Han Fei in a row. Okay, I'm honest with you now. Han Fei took the sun moon shells and glanced at them. He immediately smiled and said, come on, let's hurry up. The giant beasts were looking at this scene expectantly. Han Fei's hand lit up with a golden light, and the old snail felt his soul tremble. After only 2 minutes, he slowly opened his eyes. Then the old snail said in shock, this technique is so simple and violent. Stainless. What is stainless? Han Fei clearly saw that the old snail's face was glowing as if he had obtained a treasure. Then, golden light radiated from between the old snail's eyebrows. Swish, swish, swish. A large amount of inheritance Taoist aura submerged into the eyebrows of the giant beasts here. Seeing this scene, Han Fei couldn't help but raise his eyelids. Is it so easy to set up an inheritance? Because they were all sea expansion life forms, their speed at accepting the inheritance was extremely fast. Even an expert like Tai Yuan only needed 10 breaths to completely accept it. For example, the toad only took 30 breaths of time to accept it. The stainless profound body could be nourished with spiritual energy, demonic energy, primal chaos energy, black and yellow energy, and other pure energy of the world. It could also eliminate impurities and achieve the stainless divine body. We can't only use top-grade spirit stones as resources. Even demonic chi will do. A giant beast exclaimed, we can still use a higher grade of heaven and earth chi. A giant sighed. It's a pity that there's too little primal chaos energy. Otherwise, how strong would one become if they used it to refine one's body? Han Fei was speechless. That guy was really bold. Even he didn't dare to think like that. If he really had that much chaotic energy to temper his body, his strength would have increased by at least 50%, wouldn't it? Han Fei just estimated it out of thin air and didn't take it seriously, because he didn't need the void mystic body anymore. The toad croaked. Does this mean that we can quickly digest the resources? Watertooth said, I want to eat 10 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones in one go. The one-horned female flood dragon added, I have already accumulated 8 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones. I can finally refine them all at once. In an instant, all the giant beasts were celebrating. As they celebrated, the surrounding waves shook and waves rose one after another. And the old snail was not stingy and continued to pass on the stainless profound body to all the venerable beasts here. Because he knew that even if he passed on the stainless profound body, there would still be many people who couldn't grow quickly because they didn't have resources. So, after a while, the old snail said, anyone who has passed on the stainless profound body can go to the mist sea to look for mineral veins later. Even the heaven-opening realm kings were missing a few. Han Fei hurriedly said, Hey. Senior, shouldn't we discuss how to deal with the 100 Demons clan and the underwater human race? Tai Yuan said, you attacked the 100 Demons clan and the underwater human race for resources, didn't you? Now that you have the resources, the first step you should do is to stabilize your cultivation, lay out your origin sea, and improve your strength to a higher level. You also need to choose a path of giant beasts and cultivate reincarnation. It will take you 100 years to complete all these. Han Fei thought about it and agreed. But what made him speechless was that if they all ran away, how much wasted spiritual energy would they have to cultivate? Han Fei said, "Actually, Senior Snail Emperor, you should have let them stay here to cultivate. In this way, they can communicate with each other. Now that they have run away, there will be no one to ask when they encounter problems." The old snail thought it made sense. He said to the remaining kings and venerables, "Those who haven't left, stay. Cultivate for 100 years and communicate with each other." Then the old snail looked at Han Fei and said, "Do you want to fuse with the other half of your body? Can you maintain this for a long time?" This. Han Fei's face suddenly changed. He couldn't help but look at the old snail. When he was outside, he had used the Gemini divine technique and the art of shapeshifting to hide his black fog body without a trace and turned into an inconspicuous little stone. How could he be discovered? The old snail said, "After all, I'm an emperor. Although I can't exert my full strength, I'm still very strong. How can I not know what you're doing? Besides, this emperor knows how to count every blade of grass, every tree, and even every grain of sand in this origin ground. How could this emperor not have noticed an extra stone?" Han Fei didn't know what to say. "You're an emperor. Why do you care how much gravel there is here?" Tai Yuan said, "Han Fei boy, the snail emperor doesn't mean to hurt you. Besides, once you cultivate the divine path of giant beasts, you will eventually be a member of the giant beasts. In fact, giving you 100 billion resources is equivalent to creating a strong master for the giant beasts. So, the giant beasts won't lose anything." Han Fei thought to himself, "Of course you won't lose anything. It seems that I've made a big profit, but in fact, if I pass on my pure mystic body to so many people at once, how many strong masters can I cultivate with sufficient resources?" Up to now, his pure mystic body had only been taught to the people in the Thug Academy, and it had a very small range. Now once it was spread out, it might become the mainstream body tempering technique of the giant beasts, and the possibility of it being spread out in the future would be extremely high. Han Fei thought that he would have to ask if he could pass on a great technique like the void fire refining technique in the next 10-year promise. After all, they were all from the Thug Academy. Even if it couldn't be passed on to so many people, it would be good to pass it on to Xia Xiaochan and the others. Han Fei had no choice but to return to his original body. The old snail pretended not to see it and said, "This divine body of origin hasn't changed much since I encountered it. Until now, except for being able to trigger the mist in this mist sea, it hasn't changed at all. You can try to study it. After all, you are also a human being and so is he. Maybe you can establish a connection." Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Senior Snail King, are you saying that this divine beast of origin is a god?" The old snail said, "Isn't it? If it's not a god, how could it pass on such an amazing Tao? Besides, you should know about the battle of the gods. Perhaps, it's just that this god accidentally died here, creating the mist sea. Even the chaotic ocean is lost because of him. Han Fei, don't believe it just because it might be a god. If the Arch Palace can appear in the chaotic azure sea, then the gods can naturally appear here as well." Han Fei was speechless. Would a god die here in such a way? Han Fei didn't really believe it. Besides, there wasn't even the slightest pressure of a god here. If it was a god, how could a group of venerables and kings approach it? That formless opportunity could crush a person to death. However, Han Fei didn't argue with the old snail about this. After all, it had been here for hundreds of thousands of years. 1 month later, Han Fei spent a total of 32.8 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones to build his origin sea that spanned 100,000 kilometers. When all this was set up, Han Fei suddenly had a feeling that he seemed to be able to open the sky. It seemed that after the origin sea became a whole, there was an invisible force in the veins of the entire origin sea that was rushing to the sky. It seemed that the sky was going to be opened. However, Han Fei forcibly suppressed this impulse. He didn't know enough about the heaven-opening state. Old Yuan once told him that the heaven-opening state was not only about breaking through the origin sea but also about strengthening the understanding of the great Tao. The key to opening the sky was how to do it. Most people opened the sky by force and broke the sky of the origin sea. There were also a small number of people, such as sword cultivators, who opened the sky with sword Tao and opened the sword palace. Some people opened the sky with an epiphany of the great Tao, so they naturally opened the sky. Besides, it was best to comprehend the heaven-opening state first and then undergo the heaven-opening state's tribulation. Otherwise, it was very easy to have problems during the tribulation. Han Fei was in such a situation now. He had to comprehend the heaven-opening state first before he could undergo the tribulation. Chapter 2059. Of course, Han Fei hadn't comprehended the sky splitter yet because he hadn't devoted himself to studying his Tao yet. Since the snail had given him enough resources, he wasn't in a hurry to rob and kill the demons and the underwater human clans. At the end of the day, what he wanted was resources. If he really wanted to say what kind of hatred he had for these forces, it would be because they had once attacked him. Although almost the entire chaotic ocean was looking for the Yin-Yang heaven, it was almost impossible to find the Yin-Yang heaven in less than 100 years. Unless all the sea creatures in the chaotic azure sea were their spies. 3 days later, Han Fei returned to the Yin-Yang heaven and told Xia Shaochan and the others that he would be cultivating outside for a few years. He left 10 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones and left in a hurry. 3 months later, in the land of origin, in Han Fei's origin sea. No way! Han Fei frowned. The 10,000 strands of immortal spiritual energy had only expanded the origin sea by less than 1,000 kilometers. This meant that even if he consumed all the immortal spiritual energy, he could only expand the origin sea by 1 or 2,000 kilometers, which was meaningless. Han Fei even felt that it would be more difficult to expand the origin sea beyond 100,000 kilometers. Although the 10,000 strands of immortal spiritual energy could still expand 700 or 800 kilometers, it would be good if he could expand it by 500 kilometers. After all, this origin sea was a process of continuous expansion from the inside out. At this point, the consumption of expanding it by 1 meter would be hundreds of thousands of times greater than the original consumption, so the consumption would naturally be greater and greater. Han Fei also tried to expand it with spiritual energy, but after consuming 1 million ultra-quality spiritual stones, the origin sea only expanded by less than 5 kilometers. This actual data made Han Fei's heart sink. If this continued, the more it expanded, the more resources it would consume. Han Fei didn't try again, and there was no need to try again. This was really too expensive. Han Fei said to part of the old turtle's soul, "Old Yuan, how do you usually expand the origin sea in the heaven-opening state?" The old turtle said, "Well, the heaven-opening state generally doesn't expand the origin sea too often if they don't have some resources. And they rarely use resources to expand the origin sea. Then just leave it there?" The old turtle, "Use the great Tao. After splitting open the sky, your origin sea will give birth to immortal spiritual energy and Tao charm, allowing it to multiply endlessly. At this time, you need to consider how to maintain the balance of your origin sea world. For example, wind, thunder, rain, lightning, the rise and fall of the sun and moon, the survival of all living beings, and so on." If you're interested, you can research the creation of living beings. Should we continue the simulation? The old tortoise said, "It's not a simulation. When you reach the heaven-opening realm, you will understand the workings of heaven and earth, and the Tao of heaven and earth is your own Tao." In a sense, the circulation of the origin sea was also the circulation of one's own Tao. The operation of the great Tao is also the origin of your Tao aura. Han Fei asked, "Then the Taoist aura that I have will be used to open up the origin sea?" The old turtle said, "To be honest, it's very difficult to open another origin sea after 100,000 kilometers. If you don't belong to a superpower that has endless resources, then you can either find the starting ground like I said, or slowly grind it with your own great Tao. In fact, the most reasonable way is to use your own great Tao to open up the origin sea, because using resources is actually a shortcut. Only the origin sea opened up by the great Tao will be more solid. and the origin sea built up by the accumulation of resources needs to be stabilized, strengthened, and improved. Han Fei asked, "Is it so difficult? Doesn't that mean that the origin sea of most heaven-opening realms is suppressed to about 100,000 kilometers?" The old turtle nodded. "However, when you open the sky and become an emperor, you will get a little bit of one of the most powerful forces in this world, that is, the primordial purple chi. Unfortunately, you can only use the primordial purple chi for a very short period of time when you open the sky. If you use it well, you can forcibly open the origin sea at the moment when you open the sky. I have heard that someone opened the sky and opened the sea for 80,000 kilometers in a day." Primordial purple chi? Opened 80,000 kilometers in a day? Han Fei was shocked. What kind of fucking strong master could do this? The old turtle smiled and said, "Well, you can't believe it. How do you know what happened in other people's origin sea? Maybe he was just teasing you. If one can really open the sky and open the sea in a day, wouldn't he be able to crush countless heaven-opening realm experts?" Han Fei frowned. "Crush?" The old turtle nodded. "Well, although we generally don't open the origin sea, that's because the resources are limited or the accumulated great Tao is not enough. Once we open the origin sea, how can we fight? We have to leave some means to protect ourselves, right? However, if you want to make your strength stronger, you still have to open it up. We usually accumulate a large amount of resources or a large amount of great Tao, and then open it up all at once. Basically, all the emperors do this." Han Fei asked, "So, the size of the sea is also the main standard to measure the strength of the heaven-opening realm, right?" The old turtle nodded. "Yes. But generally speaking, the sea opened up by the great Tao is stronger than the sea opened up by resources. But if you have enough mysterious yellow soil or primordial spiritual soil, then there's nothing to say." Han Fei learned some knowledge about opening the sky in advance, but this knowledge was useless to him. However, this at least proved one thing, which was that he didn't have to consider opening up the origin sea to make himself stronger. In the sea-opening realm, the size of the origin sea had almost reached the limit. The only thing he could do now was to study his own great Tao. Or, he could also try to cultivate the void body refining technique to the phenomenal success level. In this case, his strength should be further improved. He didn't know whether his strength could be improved by 20%, but it was definitely enough to improve by at least one level. However, compared to these, he had to spend some time studying the giant beast divine Tao. The giant beast divine Tao itself contained 1398746 kinds of giant beast great Tao, most of which were the paths chosen by other giant beasts, and there were as many as 1,000,000 kinds. Han Fei had been studying it in the origin sea for a whole year. Based on his current understanding of the giant beast great Tao, Han Fei found that the cultivation of the giant beast divine Tao, like the fish transformation technique, also had a process from rough to mature. The core problem that ran through the entire giant beast divine Tao was the lack of resources, overburdened and extremely powerful body refining techniques. Generation after generation of giant beasts had been studying this problem. Most of the giant beasts tried to create an extremely powerful body refining technique. This kind of giant beast great Tao accounted for 50%. The remaining 40% of the giant beast great Tao was studying what kind of creature to choose as its main body to bear its terrifying physical body in the later stage. And in this 90% of the giant beast great Tao, 60% cultivated with their main body, and 30% transformed other creatures into the giant beast of their choice. As for the last 10%, it was all kinds of unconventional giant beasts. Han Fei's favorite was also this kind of giant beast great Tao. After all, it was the best great Tao that the giant beasts had come up with in their lifetime. Each of them had its own rationality. For example, Han Fei saw the giant beast great Tao that Water Toot Toot cultivated. That great Tao was based on the jellyfish, which turned itself into water. In this way, not only could it constantly expand its body, but it could also bear the unparalleled physical strength. Moreover, the creator of this great Tao had also overcome the shortcomings of this great Tao. That was, this great Tao itself showed a contrast with the physique of the giant beast great Tao. So he created the power of extreme compression and directly refined the giant beast's body into a body of water. It existed with pressure as its main body strength. In addition to water to its great Tao, there was also the giant beast great Tao. It actually tried in vain to refine itself into a heavenly beast, meaning a heavenly beast. It wanted to refine itself into a part of heaven. Han Fei didn't know what it was thinking. The result might be that it was struck to death. There was also a great Tao that created the operation of anti-force, dividing its giant beast great Tao into two parts. One was anti-gravity, so that it could ignore the gravity of its own body. However, there were very few giant beasts that were really crushed to death by the gravity of its own body. Therefore, the second part that this person researched was regarded as the operation of anti-force and anti-soul. It didn't need to practice at all. Any creature that attacked it, its power would pass through its body and become its own power. Then it would form its own attack and then hit back. The same was true for soul attacks. Although Han Fei didn't know what happened to this giant beast in the end, this idea was really cool. However, this seemed to be contrary to the giant beast great Tao's great Tao. However, who said that giant beasts had to strengthen their bodies? Han Fei felt that this might be a direction of choice. On this day, Han Fei was still reading these great Tao of giant beasts. In another half a month, he would almost finish reading them. Suddenly, when Han Fei saw a great Tao of giant beasts, he suddenly straightened his body. This great Tao was about a nirvana Tao. This was somewhat similar to the great Tao of King Crab and the others. The difference was that the King Crab and the others' great Tao of shedding and rebirth was dangerous. They had to recultivate again, and each recultivation was just the limit of the divine Tao of giant beasts. Han Fei just felt that it was a waste of time, so he didn't choose the King Crab's great Tao of shedding and rebirth as his first choice. But theoretically speaking, his great Tao was very reasonable. If he could keep improving his bloodline and his life level, he could theoretically cultivate to the immortal state. However, this nirvana Tao made Han Fei more interested, because he didn't need to recultivate again and again like the King Crab. Every time he recultivated, there was a possibility that he might die. This great Tao of nirvana was like the nirvana of a phoenix. It was known as the immortal firebird. If they were killed, they would be reborn from the ashes, and they would become even stronger. If so, wouldn't it be infinitely stronger? Han Fei continued to read. This was exactly the great Tao that this person walked. But the description above mentioned. Rebirth required the support of energy and treasures. Before every nirvana, he had to prepare the resources for the nirvana. And what resources were determined the strength after nirvana. That's it. Han Fei felt that his inventions were still not as good as Zhang Xuanyu's. But in terms of resources, even 10 Zhang Xuanyu's couldn't compare to him. To cultivate this great Tao, one only needed to find powerful enough treasures to make one's nirvana. It was simple and straightforward. He wondered why so many people didn't choose this great Tao. Han Fei thought to himself, I have to ask the old snail. Chapter 2060. The old snail didn't like to move. In addition, he had accumulated a lot of resources over the years, so he couldn't stop cultivating the pure mystic body from the beginning. It was a long-lost feeling of strength growth. Whether it was the old snail or Tai Yuan, after obtaining the pure mystic body, they knew that it was a super powerful body tempering technique that far surpassed the Chaos Fiend body. Even if this body tempering technique consumed too many resources. One of the reasons why Han Fei passed down this technique was to make the Chaos Heavens stand on his side. If that was the case, then his side would be equivalent to the three emperors. In the chaotic Azure Sea, they would become an unshakable super force. At this moment, on the back of the origin divine body, the old snail was cultivating the pure mystic body. The remaining spiritual energy in his body was constantly spewing out. In addition to the old snail, many sea expansion behemoths were cultivating the same way. This strange situation directly caused the richness of the spiritual energy in the land of origin to reach an unimaginable level. Seeing this, Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. The richness of the spiritual energy here was probably 70 or 80 times stronger than in the yin-yang heaven. To put it bluntly, cultivating here for a day was equivalent to cultivating in other places in the chaotic azure sea for 100 days. Han Fei's appearance didn't distract the kings. Everyone was actively consuming the resources they had accumulated. After so many years, who hadn't saved up billions of ultra-quality spiritual stones? Therefore, they naturally didn't have time to talk to Han Fei. Han Fei ran to the old snail's side. Seeing that the old snail didn't respond, he patted the snail's shell. "Senior Snail Emperor, I have a question. I saw a great Tao called Nirvana Divine Tao in the giant beast Divine Tao. I want to ask, why doesn't anyone take this great Tao?" Although the old snail was cultivating, he naturally knew that Han Fei was here. Hearing Han Fei ask this question, the old snail wasn't surprised at all. He said, "I didn't. There are many people who take this great Tao. It's fine in the early stages, but in the later stages, the difficulty of nirvana is too high. For example, if you want to go from the sea expansion realm to the nirvana realm, you may need many kinds of heaven spirit and earth treasures. You even need different rare treasures to carry the recovery of your body after nirvana. Where can you find these rare treasures in the end?" Han Fei thought to himself, just because the resources can't be found? Are we not going to take this path? The old snail. There is another important reason. After every nirvana, the new body would be at least 30% stronger than the old body. If it's lower than 30%, the path of nirvana will cause you to suffer a backlash. Therefore, the resources prepared for every nirvana must be increased by at least 30% or more. Han Fei couldn't help frowning. How could there be such a weird trick? The old snail continued. Also, there are conditions for nirvana. After undergoing nirvanic rebirth, you have stabilized your cultivation base and reached the limits of this body. You need to find someone to kill you. Borrowing the hands of others to help oneself attain nirvana. You need other people's anger. Only when they are extremely angry and furious will you absorb their anger as one of the most important resources for nirvana. That's why you can't find your friends yet. But if your enemy is too strong, he can kill you before you reach nirvana, but he can also kill you after you reach nirvana. Han Fei had a headache when he heard that. Sure enough, every path was not easy to take. The first difficulty of the nirvana path was resources, the second difficulty was to prevent the backlash, and the third difficulty was to provoke the enemy's anger to kill him. However, although these conditions were harsh, there were ways to solve them. Han Fei said, "Senior, you're so experienced. Do you have any other experiences that you haven't shared with me besides this giant beast divine path?" The old snail, "I don't have any experience. It's just that there are too many people who take this path. However, they died one after another, and in the end, no one took this path. Look at the giant beasts. None of them took the nirvana path because they think they can't hold on for too many times." But Han Fei felt that it was probably because the chaotic azure sea was too small. If it were in the outside world, there would be many people who took this path. Anyway, Han Fei was not cultivating with his real body. Even if this path didn't work, it wouldn't matter. But what if it worked? By then, his external incarnations would all return to their origins, and it would be hard for him to imagine to what extent his strength would be improved. After learning about the various shortcomings of the nirvana path, Han Fei immediately returned to the origin sea. Now that he had chosen the path, there were two more things to do. First, he had to choose the creature he wanted to transform into. This time, Han Fei couldn't choose the human race. If the human race was too big, it would really be fatal everywhere. Even if he conquered all the fatal points, he would become a supergiant. What? Did he want to create a new world? In fact, when Han Fei was studying the path, he had already come up with countless ideas. However, in the end, Han Fei still turned his eyes to octopus-like creatures like Little Fatty. Take Little Fatty, for example, as a son of a turtle, it could directly absorb 90% of the force. In the same realm, Han Fei didn't think that anyone could directly kill Little Fatty with physical means. Unless, in the same realm, there was someone who was 10 times stronger than Little Fatty. Secondly, The behemoth clan focused on body refinement. If he chose a creature like an octopus, not only could it absorb the force, but it also had a strong defense. In the same realm, it might need to be 20 times stronger than him to kill him. Thirdly, the regenerative ability of octopus creatures was too strong. They could control their flesh and blood at will. Even if they were broken, they could quickly recover through the wriggling of muscles and the contraction of blood vessels and meridians, so there was basically no bleeding. As long as he was fast, the severed limb would grow back the next day. Han Fei pondered for a long time. It seemed that unless he was absolutely suppressed by his strength, choosing an octopus creature seemed to be the most perfect one among all the creatures he knew. Besides, when he killed Zhou Bai in the Imperial Palace, he happened to get a demon emperor's inner core, which was the inner core of a heaven-opening state cultivator. As the foundation of his external incarnation, even if he didn't undergo nirvana, his octopus body wouldn't be weak. As for what to use as the body after nirvana in the future, he would have to wait and see. Anyway, the cultivation of the external incarnation couldn't be done in a day or two. After quickly deciding on the body of the external incarnation, there was only one thing left, which was the external incarnation. Of course, he couldn't use the external incarnation of Neza. That one had already embarked on its own path, which was purely the path of fighting and killing. It had even comprehended the way of swordsmanship and mastered such a powerful method as the heaven-opening sword manual. However, it wouldn't embark on the path of swordsmanship, because Neza's external incarnation had been fighting, and killing since it was a child. It was proficient in all kinds of weapons. Even if it comprehended the way of swordsmanship, it would still be difficult for it to embark on the path of swordsmanship. Since he didn't need Neza's external incarnation, Han Fei was very confident. Naturally, he had other plans. Once, in the ideal palace, he struggled so hard to obtain the Universal 3. Because he was missing a page of the Golden Scroll, the Universal 3 that he got in the end was not a complete version, but an incomplete version. Because for a long time, Han Fei felt that he didn't need to use the external incarnation. Then, by a freak accident, he refined an external incarnation with the body of the water fairy, so Han Fei naturally didn't lack external incarnations. In Han Fei's view, before he came to the land of origin, the external incarnations weren't very useful. Even Neza's body hadn't reached the sea-opening realm yet, even though his strength was already extremely strong in the venerable realm. However, it was still too difficult to catch up with his original body. Therefore, even if he mastered the Universal 3, it wouldn't be very meaningful if he could only create a few external incarnations similar to Neza's body. However, the divine path of the giant beast was different. This was a great way that could lead to divinity. The moment Han Fei saw it, he knew that he had to take this path, so he decided to use the Universal 3. Of course, to use the Universal 3, he had to continue to deduce it first. And from the incomplete version to the complete version, he only needed 10 wisps of chaotic energy. In the past, when he didn't even have a wisp of chaotic energy, 10 wisps of chaotic energy was already an astronomical number. But now, it was just a drizzle, not worth mentioning. In his mind, Han Fei said in his heart, "Deduce." In just over 10 minutes, the complete version of the Universal 3 appeared in his mind. Universal 3, unrated. Note: it can separate one person into 3. It can create 2 external incarnations. According to the cultivator's will, the external incarnations can be recultivated from childhood. Besides, the external incarnations are not connected to the main body's soul. Deduction consumption, 1,000 wisps of chaotic energy drawback. If the external incarnations are not connected to the main body's soul, the external incarnations will easily develop their own will. Note 1. The main body can choose to consume 30% of the main body's origin power, so that the external incarnations can inherit the main body's bloodline foundation and providence foundation. Note 2. According to the bloodline and potential of the main body, the external incarnations can ignore the level barrier and heavenly tribulation to a certain extent. In fact, after coming here, Han Fei frowned slightly. Consuming 30% of his origin power meant that the power of his main body was weakened. Although it was optional, if his main body lost 30% of its power, it meant that his strength would be greatly reduced. Besides, if the external incarnations developed their own will, if they refused to return or even competed with him for the main body, wouldn't they be like Xue Fan? In order to create a Xue Fan, he even ate his main body in the end? Fortunately, this technique could still be deduced. The second time, 1,000 wisps of chaotic energy were consumed. The name of the technique was Dao begets 3. The drawback of this technique was greatly reduced, but it was still possible for the external incarnations to develop their own will. And the consumption of chaotic energy was as much as 20%. The third deduction consumed 10,000 wisps of chaotic energy. This time, Han Fei's eyes popped up. One turning into 3 pure ones, unrated. Note, it can separate one person into 3. It can create 2 external incarnations. According to the cultivator's will, the external incarnations can be recultivated from childhood. Besides, the external incarnations are not connected to the main body's soul. Deduction consumption. Unable to deduce drawback. One turning into 3 pure ones must create a second external incarnation. Finally, when the 2 external incarnations are at the same level as the main body, the 3 pure ones can be combined into 1. Note 1. The main body can choose to use its own essence, blood, and soul as a guide to prevent the external incarnations from developing their own will. Note 2. The main body can choose to consume 1% of the origin power of the main body so that the external incarnations can inherit the bloodline foundation and the foundation of providence of the main body. Note 3. According to the bloodline and potential of the main body, the external incarnations can ignore the level barrier and heavenly tribulation to a certain extent. Note 4. After the 3 pure ones are combined into 1, the basic strength of the main body will increase by at least 3 to 9 times. At this point, the 3 pure ones couldn't be deduced. And this could only be Han Fei's final choice. Phew, 3 to 9 times the strength increase? Han Fei touched his chin. 1% of the origin power is not much. This is totally a gamble. Although it's a bit difficult to combine the 3 pure ones, the return is too high. Chapter 2061. When the one turning into 3 pure ones was deduced, Han Fei couldn't have been more excited. Although he didn't know when the second incarnation would be created, there would be plenty of opportunities for the sea creatures in the future. If he couldn't do it, Han Fei felt that he could even take the path of the behemoth. All in all, with such a high rate of return, he was full of confidence in attaining immortality. Although he hadn't even opened the sky yet. More importantly, both the one turning into 3 pure ones and the one turning into 3 pure ones mentioned incarnations, which could ignore the barriers between levels and heavenly tribulations to a certain extent. In other words, his incarnation didn't necessarily need to go through tribulations. As long as he could continue on this path, his odds of success would be far higher than others. That was fucking ridiculous. As for 10% of the original power, Han Fei could afford it. He just needed to recultivate. At that moment, Han Fei did as he said, which saved Han Fei a lot of trouble. He summoned Little Fatty, took a mass of essence, blood, and soul from it, and injected it into the demon Emperor Naiden. Then he infused chaotic energy, soul power, flesh power, and spiritual will into it. At that moment, in Han Fei's origin sea, the wind and clouds were surging, and even some of the immortal spiritual energy that Han Fei didn't intend to put into it was absorbed into this new incarnation. In addition, Han Fei also tried to change some of the meridians of his incarnation and constructed a very complicated yin-yang millstone array in his body, in order to better absorb energy and resources in the future. In front of Han Fei, the flesh and blood of living creatures were growing in the void. Whether it was his own flesh and blood, soul, demon Emperor Naiden, or other resources. At this moment, they all turned into nothingness and were devoured by the chaotic phantom in front of him. He didn't know if it was because the incarnation he created was too strong, but the creation this time was a little different from that of the incarnation created by the water deity. The creation this time lasted for 6 days and 6 nights. Han Fei watched the flesh and blood, meridians, and demonic veins intertwined during the whole process. In the end, when the body of a black octopus appeared, information popped up in Han Fei's eyes. Name: Immortal Demon Octopus, External Incarnation. Introduction: It used to be a primeval ferocious beast. Because it once had a god in its veins, it became mysterious and can be classified as a god. The immortal demon octopus has extremely powerful regenerative and self-healing abilities, and its suckers can absorb spiritual energy, essence, blood, vitality, and soul. When attacked, it could neutralize 90% of the attack. It could also devour the spiritual attacks of all creatures within level 10 and transform them into its own spiritual attacks. Level 76 Quality: Mysterious, Realm, Seeking, Spiritual Energy, 223664 Collectible: Immortal Demon Core, Immortal Eye. Collectible: Immortal Monster Pill, Eye of Devouring. Note: Immortal Demon Core, Devouring Eye. Remarks: The immortal demon octopus was once a prehistoric beast. Good heavens, there's actually a connection between the living beings I created? Han Fei was confused. Although its target was the octopus, it must be more than that, right? The only thing he could use was the essence, blood, and soul of the 9 death souls splitting octopus. For this to happen, it was highly likely that the bloodline of the 9 death soul splitting octopus contained some traces of the bloodline of the undying demon octopus. In Car returning spirit Chin of world of Fei of essence, he in was able, he of the turning, of the god of the body. Little Fatty had the faint bloodline of a divine beast, while Han Fei's was a primeval ferocious beast. They belonged to 2 different camps. Could it be that divine beasts and primeval ferocious beasts had sex in the distant history? Han Fei thought it was highly possible. The old turtle had mentioned it before. Actually, if one really studied the bloodlines of the 10,000 races, one would find that they were all mixed. The bloodlines hidden in the deepest depths might contain everything. Even an ordinary person might have the bloodline of a god. Some people were lucky and showed signs of atavism. They accidentally activated the 1 in a million ability of that bloodline and became a proud son of heaven. Some people might live an ordinary life without even knowing that they had such a powerful bloodline. Anyway, Han Fei felt that he had made a profit this time. In a sense, his external incarnation should be a kind of son of God, right? Now, his external incarnation was only 1,000 meters tall. However, once he started to practice the divine way of beasts, the immortal demon octopus would quickly grow larger. Han Fei couldn't imagine how strong the immortal demon octopus would be when it cultivated to the same level as the old snail. Han Fei grinned. From now on, my external incarnation will be called Zhang Daqian. Well, it fits the image of an octopus. Besides, since this external incarnation is a sea demon behemoth, it doesn't need to cultivate with the main body. It can walk a path that belongs to sea demons alone. Of course, that's after I go to the sea realm. Now, Zhang Daqian is still too weak. Even if he has a powerful background, his realm is still not high enough. Han Fei moved the tentacles of his new body, feeling still not used to it. He said, "Old Yuan, what do you think of my external incarnation?" To be honest, the old turtle was dumbfounded at this moment. He knew that Han Fei was going to create an external incarnation, but he didn't expect that Han Fei would create such a creature that he didn't recognize at all. The old turtle asked, "Do you know which clan you belong to?" Han Fei smiled. "Which clan can I belong to?" "The octopus clan." The old turtle was speechless. "It's not the same species as other octopuses. Anyway, I don't know it. Are you going to use this external incarnation to cultivate the path of behemoths?" Han Fei shrugged. "Of course, you haven't seen it. You don't understand how terrifying this path is." The old turtle asked, "Didn't that snail say that this path is extremely difficult to cultivate?" Han Fei sneered. "This is a great path to the divine realm. If it's not difficult, can he become a divine realm cultivator?" Divine realm? The old turtle was stunned. How could there be a great path to the divine realm in this shabby place? Even he was a little tempted by her words. However, although he was tempted, he still had his main body, which was already in the heaven-opening realm. If he had a chance to return to his main body in the future, he might consider cultivating the path of behemoths, but not for now. On the other side, Han Fei controlled his octopus body and began to move, adapting to the habits of an octopus. He found that this body was too fucking flexible. He could control any suction cup on his body at will, and even any muscle in his body, any meridian. He could twist himself into any shape, and he could even control his tentacles to dance in all sorts of ways. In terms of physical flexibility, Han Fei felt that this thing was almost fucking perfect. On the other side, Han Fei looked at his personal information. After all, he had consumed 10% of his original power, so his strength must have been reduced. In his eyes, information popped up. Honored Han Fate level greater than 99, see opening realm, see expanding realm greater than 840,006, upgradable. Chaotic energy greater than 143,819 wisps, spiritual power 991134, perception range 1,000,000 kilometers, power greater than 461,128 wave. First spiritual heritage, primordial vein, second spiritual heritage, vein of eternal darkness, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, leveled 90, second spiritual beast, emperor sparrow, level 92, main arts time fishing, level 8 of void fishing, emperor. Level, divine quality. Seeing this scene, Han Fei heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was not too outrageous. His current strength was roughly weaker than when he attacked the investiture heaven, but not much weaker. He only lost tens of thousands of waves in strength. After that, the increase in strength brought by his cultivation after the investiture heaven, including the resources of his origin sea, was almost completely consumed when he created the external incarnation this time. In other words, after the investiture heaven, all his efforts were actually in vain. His strength was less than 5% weaker than before he attacked the investiture heaven. Fortunately, strength and whatnot could be regained through cultivation. He just needed to spend a few hundred more years practicing the void sky observation technique and the void body refinement technique. If he cultivated in his origin sea, it wouldn't take more than 10 years. However, Han Fei saw the words upgradable on the sea expanding realm family tree. He couldn't help but take another look. When he took a closer look, the information popped up: sea species 296202223, ownered 840006, nearby bloodlines, sea suppressing snail, time dragon carp, golden crow divine blood, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, emperor sparrow, hexagon starfish, recommended bloodline, sea suppressing snail. Han Fei was taken aback. Sea suppressing snail? Does it mean that it's the king snail? Han Fei didn't expect that the king snail's bloodline level was quite high. It was even higher than the green water Kirin. However, he hadn't gotten the king snail's blood yet. Maybe it was detected by the demon purification pot because it was very close to the king snail. Han Fei glanced at his immortal demon octopus and wondered why his external incarnation couldn't provide his bloodline to devour. Was it because it was his external incarnation? But whatever, he had to get the king snail's blood first. Immediately, Han Fei's figure flashed and he appeared in the outside world. Senior King Snail, I'm in trouble. You have to help me. As soon as Han Fei jumped out, he roared at the king snail. The king snail was cultivating happily and couldn't help but say, "It's only been a few days. Why did you come out again?" Han Fei hurriedly said, "Senior King Snail, please lend me a drop of essence blood. I'm building an external incarnation, and now I'm just short of a super bloodline. In this land of origin, only your bloodline is the strongest. You can't just sit by and do nothing." "You want my essence blood?" The old snail was so annoyed that he didn't even know how to borrow essence blood. However, Han Fei said, "Senior, I swear in the name of the Great Way, in the name of the human king, and in the name of the heavenly tribulation that I have no ulterior motives. Believe me, my external incarnation only needs a drop of your blood." Chapter 2062. Down below, Tai Yuan and the others were all confused. Asking for blood from a fucking emperor? Are you crazy? However, many Heaven Yuan realm cultivators were thinking, fuck, why didn't I ask for blood from the snail emperor? Because if it was just a drop of essence blood, it wouldn't be a big problem. After all, you want essence blood, not a wisp of your soul. Who hadn't lost pure essence blood in battle? If essence blood could kill someone, then countless people of the vast sea race would have been killed by now. However, everything had its risks. Who knew if there were any problems in it? However, Han Fei made an oath with the Great Tribulation, which shocked even the Snail Emperor. Han Fei said, "Senior Snail Emperor, my giant beast body will be invincible in the same realm. In the future, when I have a stronger body refining technique, how can I forget you? Besides, what's the point of taking your essence blood? I, Han Fei, am a bona fide sovereign personage, unrivaled in the world, able to open the sea and split the sky. Given my status, I will not tolerate doing anything improper to your essence blood." The old snail froze for a while and said, "You said your incarnation needs my blood?" The old snail asked, "Aren't you the reincarnation of Xiao?" "Since I can create an incarnation, why do I need to be the reincarnation of Xiao?" Tai Yuan was taken aback and couldn't help interjecting, "Han Fei, creating an incarnation is no trivial matter. It's impossible to create it without a host body. This requires a lot of luck." Han Fei said, "I have a lot of luck. I got a monster emperor inner core in the Imperial Palace and used it as the foundation to create a big meridian. I even obtained some of Sherpa Huang's flesh from the sword god as a primer. Then I severed my own flesh, blood, and divine soul, and added Huang Jingyuan's flesh, blood, and divine soul to replenish it. Then I used immortal qi and chaotic qi to nourish my beast body. But now I feel that this body can be improved even further. Hey, why are you all looking at me with such expressions? Senior Snail Emperor, if I can't integrate your essence blood within 10 minutes, my demon body will be completed, and I won't have a chance later." To be honest, both the old snail and Tai Yuan were stunned. Are you fucking creating an avatar? Are you creating a god? Han Fei didn't hide this secret, so the toad behemoth and the others heard it. At that instant, the crowd of martial dominator beasts was dumbfounded. Their hearts skipped a beat after hearing the words. The demon emperor's inner Dan, Sherpa Huang's blood essence, Huang Jingyuan's flesh, he even wanted to kill himself, and he even used the immortal qi, and now he still wanted the snail emperor's blood essence. This bastard was really going all out just to create an avatar. The toad said, "My goodness, what do you think he's going to create? Watery doodle, are you stupid? It's either the snail or the octopus, or the one that left behind the demonic emperor's inner core." The one-horned female flood dragon said, "I heard that he is going to walk the path of nirvana. He set his starting point so high at the beginning. What is he going to do next? Don't tell me you want to kill a nirvana emperor?" All the giant beasts, however, this time, even the old snail and Tai Yuan were frightened by him. If Han Fei really did that, they wouldn't have to worry anymore. They would just have to see how powerful the creature he created would be. But the old snail was not willing to be taken advantage of. He said, "I can give you the blood essence. But you have to give me a body refining technique more powerful than the pure mystic body." Han Fei's face turned green and he cursed, "You are blackmailing me. The pure mystic body was left by a venerable emperor. You want me to find you a technique more powerful than this, and you want me to give you a drop of blood essence?" Cough, cough. The old snail also seemed to feel that it might be a bit too much, so he said, "Well, if you can find such a powerful body refining technique in the future, you can give me a copy. But if you find it but don't, 100,000 years. Hearing that the old snail was going to continue, Han Fei was shocked. He now had two body refining techniques that were better than the pure mystic body. If the old snail said that if he found it but didn't give it to him, it would affect his plan to split open the sky. What should he do? Would he give him another body refining technique before splitting open the sky? So Han Fei roared, 100,000 years, within 100,000 years, I will definitely get you a body refining technique stronger than the pure mystic body. If I can't get it, I will die. I swear to the heavenly Tao, swear to luck, and swear to the incarnation I created. Otherwise, I will never be able to achieve immortality. Hurry up, it's too late. Sinu, stop nagging. Hearing this, the old snail thought that Han Fei's oath was really fucking cruel. Hearing this, the old snail didn't hesitate and immediately threw out a drop of blood essence. Han Fei's eyes lit up, turned it into blood essence, and with a swish, plunged into his sea of origin, leaving all the giant beasts outside, including the old snail, to stop cultivating. As Han Fei said, if Han Fei's incarnation would take shape within 100 seconds, then he would be able to see it in a while. What kind of magical thing did Han Fei's incarnation create? In Han Fei's sea of origin, Han Fei hummed a tune and smacked his lips. Little guy, with the IQ of a snail, do you think you can fight with me? I've cheated the South, deceived the North, and even talked nonsense in front of eldest senior brother. If I can't even fool you, I'll write my name backwards. Han Fei shouted without hesitation, devour. Anyway, Han Fei had no gate to heaven now. Since he hadn't comprehended the heavenly Tao, and his strength had been reduced after creating an incarnation, it wouldn't be a problem for him to stay in the sea of origin for another 1,000 or 800 years. On the contrary, he could take advantage of the time of devouring to study his own Tao. Thinking of this, he couldn't be happier. Of course, he still had to go out and put on a show later. His incarnation had just been created. Once he walked on the giant beast divine path, he would become a member of the giant beast clan. And the giant beast clan was the least likely to possess him. If the old snail wanted to possess his incarnation, he would have to give up his heaven-opening state body and recultivate all the way. Besides, he told the old snail that although those who created incarnations were all heaven-opening state powerhouses, they were only at the heaven-opening state. The old snail himself was already at the heaven-opening state, so it was meaningless for him to possess him. Unless he knew that there was a god in his Zhang Daqian bloodline. However, even the old turtle didn't know about this, and even the immortal demon octopus didn't know about it. How could the old snail know about it? Therefore, the old snail had 10,000 reasons not to attack him. In fact, he would even treat her well because her identity as a human was extremely invasive. It was only a matter of time before he annihilated the 100 demon clan and the human clan at the bottom of the sea, and it was not impossible for him to unify the 36 mysterious heavens. Besides, he still had the nautical panorama, which could allow him to leave the chaotic sea. Therefore, he was the most likely to carry forward the giant beast clan. And the giant beast clan was powerful in itself. Would he use the giant beast clan when the time came? Most likely he would. Therefore, from the moment Han Fei became a giant beast, the human clan and the giant beast clan were closely related. For this reason, the old snail had 10,000 reasons to protect him, but not one reason to hurt him. After adapting to the origin sea for a while, Han Fei also studied the combat skills and personal comprehensive strength of the external incarnation. In terms of combat skills, when the immortal ray burst out and shot at Han Fei's body, Han Fei felt a pure and domineering annihilation power. The moment this power touched him, it tried to disintegrate his physical body. Of course, no matter how strong the attack of a Tao Seeker was, it would be good if it could shake a venerable. Facing Han Fei's body, no matter what kind of ray it was, it didn't feel anything at all. However, the immortal demon octopus had inherited Han Fei's power. So when Han Fei burst out the power of the immortal demon octopus, he was surprised to find that its strength was as high as 1,506 waves. What kind of concept was this? When Han Fei first reached level 76, if he remembered correctly, his strength should be less than 700 waves. Then he obtained an opportunity, and after reaching level 77, he had many opportunities to surpass 1,000 waves. And 1,500 waves, that was the power that Han Fei cultivated when he was in the semi-venerable realm. Even though Han Fei had just entered the venerable realm, his strength was only 3,000 waves. Ordinary venerables only had the strength of 1,000 waves or a little more. In addition to the power, Han Fei observed the immortal demon octopus. Some of the meridians that he had tampered with had been corrected, but the effect of the yin-yang millstone was still there. However, the effect was not so strong, only less than 1/10 of the original. However, he didn't know how to create creatures, so it was already good enough that the effect was 1/10. In other words, the power of the immortal demon octopus had reached the venerable realm, and it was not an ordinary venerable. It was already so strong before cultivating the giant beast divine path. How strong would it be if it cultivated the giant beast divine path? Thinking of this, the corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. It was time to go out and put on a show. Otherwise, the old snail would think that he cheated him of his essence blood. In the outside world, the kings all raised their heads, wanting to see what Han Fei's avatar looked like. A centipede giant beast said, "The problem is that this avatar that has just been created shouldn't be too strong, right? All his power has been transformed into the origin and he's made an avatar. I guess he's only at the demonization realm or the sea demon realm now, right?" The 7 snakes and dragon snakes said, "Not necessarily. They're all at the heaven-opening realm. Even if it's used to build the origin, its strength is not as simple as the demonization realm." The toad said, "I think he may have reached the sea spirit realm. Then he only needs to cultivate for a few years to stabilize the Tao-seeking realm. In less than 100 years, he will have a chance to become a venerable. Maybe he can transcend the tribulation and become a king in 10,000 years." The kings couldn't help but look at the toad. Really? How can he walk so fast on the giant beast divine path? The toad said, "I think he has a lot of resources. We can't treat him with common sense." All of a sudden, a tiny black octopus that was thousands of feet in size appeared in his field of vision. The octopus roared, "I, Zhang Daqian, am invincible in the same realm. Who wants to fight me?" Chapter 2063. Han Fei appeared aggressively and arrogantly. Not to mention his size, just by looking at his ferocious momentum, he didn't lose. All the giant beasts were stunned. Before they could react, this fellow had already started to clamor. "Are there any giant beasts that have just become venerable ones? I, Zhang Daqian, beg for your death." All the kings, the venerables, everyone was dumbfounded by Han Fei's performance and even felt it was incredible. Is this the demeanor of a king? However, when they saw Han Fei's octopus incarnation, they knew they guessed right. It seemed that Han Fei chose the octopus itself between an octopus, a snail, and an unknown sea demon. They seemed to know why. If Han Fei chose the snail, he would follow in the footsteps of the Snail King. The Empress Snail had repeatedly said that she wasn't powerful when she was at the venerable realm and that she was only good at taking hits. It could be seen that the Emperor Snail's main ability was defense. It was more durable than some crabs, shellfish, lobsters, and snails. However, the octopus was different. It was good at both offense and defense. Many people had considered this before making their choice. However, due to various reasons, he didn't make a choice. However, this did not mean that there were fewer giant beasts that chose the body of an octopus. The main reason was that most giant beasts still cultivated and evolved with their original bodies. Even so, there were as many as 10 octopuses in the origin grounds, and 2 of them were monarchs. Seeing that Han Fei turned into an octopus, the octopuses all smiled. Our octopus lineage has gained another expert. This person cannot be underestimated. At the very least, he is an expert who can stand shoulder to shoulder with Senior Tai Yuan. His name is Zhang Daqian, and his name is very unique to my clan. Was he going to challenge now? He had only just formed his avatar. Had he gotten used to it yet? This is a fight? Amidst the chaos of the beasts, the old snail looked Han Fei up and down and confirmed his identity many times before he said in confusion, I've never seen your breed before." Han Fei grinned. "I've awakened a primeval beast bloodline. It's normal that I haven't seen it in the chaotic ocean." Even the old snail couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He even awakened a great desolate vicious beast bloodline? Normally, Those seen in the chaotic azure sea were mixed-blood descendants of prehistoric beasts. Those that could be related to the great desolate beasts were usually not too weak. It seemed that the result of Han Fei's desperate attack on this incarnation was unexpectedly good. The old snail said, "It has just been formed and you are already at the intermediate Dao-seeking realm?" The octopus body said, "This might have something to do with the immortal qi. After all, I killed Huang Jinyuan and got a lot of it." Alright, now that my divine body has appeared, is there a weakest giant beast venerable that wants to spar with me? The old snail said, "You've only created an incarnation, you haven't walked on the giant beast divine path yet. You want to compete with the giant beast venerable one now?" Even the weakest giant beast venerable one had almost 2,500 waves of power. "Are you sure you can beat him?" Han Fei grinned. "Come on." Zhang Daqian bounced off the ground with his tentacles and leaped into the air. He looked at a giant scorpion beast and said, "You should be the weakest, right? Come, attack with all your might, don't hold back." Xie Sanchue had immediately thought of running. He had thought this was a matter of sea expansion experts. With his weak strength, how could it possibly concern him? However, Han Fei had chosen him. Xie Sanchue had no choice but to look at the Snail Emperor. The Snail Emperor nodded and said, "Sanchu, go all out." Xie Sanchue sighed inwardly when he heard this. He then looked at Han Fei and said, "Sir King, please excuse me." Han Fei stretched out a tentacle and hooked it. "Don't worry. I need someone to test my strength. Let's not talk about anything else first. You're known as the Three Hammers, so I'll let you hammer me 3 times first." All the giant beasts. Xie Sanchue was also confused. He had never heard such an unreasonable request in his life. Even the other giant octopuses were dumbfounded. One of the octopus behemoths said, "I don't think that's possible. Although the octopus clan is extremely flexible and resilient, and our ability to resist attacks is very strong. However, if Xie Sanchue really went all out, his strength would definitely reach 3,000 waves. How can a mid-stage Dao-seeking realm cultivator block it?" An octopus behemoth nodded. "If it's a demi-venerable, I believe Han Fei will definitely win. However, the mid-stage Dao-seeking realm is still far from the demi-venerable realm. Besides, he hasn't embarked on the divine path of beasts yet. Even if he has a primeval beast bloodline, can his strength reach 800 waves?" Obviously, everyone had the same opinion. No matter how good you were at neutralizing the force, you might be able to survive 3 or 4 times the force, but you wouldn't die. The gap between you and Han Fei was almost 4 times. Besides, the effect of every extra wave of force would be completely different, which couldn't be measured in multiples. Xie Sanchue was a ferocious scorpion anyway. Hearing Han Fei's request, he wanted to object. Han Fei's king body was still here, and he couldn't really smash him. He raised his huge body and smashed his stinger like a hammer. Because Han Fei wanted a hammer, he didn't move. The shadow of the hammer smashed down like a meteor. Bam! However, Han Fei didn't block it at all. Floating in midair, he was smashed more than 2,000 kilometers away and hit a lobster behemoth king that was watching. Naturally, the lobster behemoth king didn't feel anything. Instead, it stared at Han Fei. "Han Fei, are you all right?" However, a pillar of water bounced off the lobster behemoth king and passed 2,000 kilometers quickly. Unharmed, Han Fei shouted, "Is that all the power of your hammer? I don't even feel any pain." Again. Seeing that Han Fei could still counterattack, Xie Sanchue immediately spun, and his 2 giant claws and stinger collided with Han Fei in midair like 3 hammers. Boom! Ripples flashed, and Han Fei was blown away again, in the direction of the lobster behemoth king. The lobster was even prepared to be the scapegoat for Han Fei again. But in the last 100 kilometers, Han Fei's falling speed became slower and slower. In the end, Han Fei's claws were pushed back by the waves, and he stopped 100 meters before the lobster behemoth king. Han Fei grinned and said, "That was quite an interesting blow. What else?" At this point, all the behemoths had figured it out. An octopus of the same clan exclaimed, King Han Fei's octopus incarnation is so powerful that it can completely adapt to the incoming attack and make its body expand like a jellyfish. At least 80% of Xie Sanchue's power has been reduced. A pioneer sea-state octopus behemoth said, not only that, but his own strength is definitely not weak either. The instantaneous power is strong enough to counterattack Xie Sanchue. His strength is far beyond that of an ordinary intermediate Dao-seeking state expert. This is at least the power of a semi-venerable. The toad behemoth beast said, wow, he's already so strong before embarking on the path of behemoths. A few years later, when he embarks on the divine path of behemoths and stabilizes his strength in the venerable realm, who in the same realm can kill him? The old snail and Tai Yuan were also quite shocked. They watched this battle not based on one's realm but one's potential. Judging from these two attacks, the potential of Han Fei's octopus incarnation was appalling. But relatively speaking, the stronger Han Fei's potential was, the more difficult it would be for him to undergo nirvana rebirth. If he wanted to undergo nirvana rebirth, what kind of resources would he need to rebuild his body? However, everyone couldn't help thinking that even if Han Fei didn't undergo nirvana rebirth, it seemed that his bloodline of a primeval beast was enough for him to successfully advance to the heaven-opening state, right? Moreover, looking at the strength of the shield, it might even be able to break through to the legendary immortal level. At this moment, Xie Sanchue's third attack had already begun. When he found that he couldn't defeat Han Fei with his strength, Xie Sanchue finally showed his real stinger. Xie Sanchue thought to himself, Han Fei hasn't practiced the divine path of behemoths yet, and this incarnation has just been created. If I can't even hurt him with my full strength, it will be a disgrace to the behemoths. This time, Xie Sanchue roared, tidal stinger. Puff! Although countless stinger shadows stabbed Han Fei's body, as Han Fei's muscles trembled, 90% of the stinger shadows slid away almost instantly. The remaining 10% directly stabbed Han Fei like a sea urchin. Although they stabbed Han Fei's skin and flesh were like balloons. They stabbed here and there, but they still couldn't pierce Han Fei even after hundreds of meters. Xie Sanchue activated the Dao, and the sharp gung metal chi burst out, leaving hundreds of holes on Han Fei's body. Phew! Countless behemoths breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that they could still pierce Han Fei's body, but his body was too fucking flexible, wasn't it? Xie Sanchue thought to himself, 3 moves have passed. Is it time to fight? But I've basically used all my strength. However, after this attack, Han Fei only retreated less than 100 kilometers. When he stopped, the hundreds of holes on his body were almost instantly covered by twisting muscles. In the horrified eyes of the behemoths, they were all healed in less than 2 seconds. Xie Sanchue was dumbfounded. How can I fight him? I can't hurt him at all. All the behemoths were stunned. What? You healed? Isn't this shameless? Xie Sanchue immediately shrank back, waved his big claws and said, Stop, Han Fei, you'd better find a more powerful beast to fight. Han Fei's eyes widened. Wait, you're going to stop fighting? I haven't even started yet. Seeing that Xie Sanchue didn't want to fight anymore, Han Fei immediately shouted, Who else? Who wants to fight? Immediately, all the venerable behemoths fell silent. There was no benefit if they won, and they would be humiliated if they lost. Han Fei watched for a long time. Seeing that no one responded, he couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, I'm invincible in the same realm, but I can't find an opponent. All the behemoths rolled their eyes, and those who didn't roll their eyes all tilted their eyes. This guy is so shameless. He knows that I'm so strong, but he still finds the weakest one to show off. If you are invincible in the same realm, why don't you find a king to fight? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.